Welcome back. Get comfortable. Wherever you are right now, whether you're lying in bed with the lights off, propped up on the couch with a blanket pulled close, or somewhere in between wakefulness and wherever sleep takes you, this one's for you. Tonight, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take a show you probably already love, and we're going to slow it way down. We're going to go through it fact by fact, detail by detail, layer after quiet layer, until you either know everything there is to know about Gravity Falls, or you drift off somewhere in the middle of the forest with the pine trees and the fireflies and the low hum of something just beyond the tree line. 250 facts. We're going to take our time with each one. Some of these you'll already know. Some of them will make you feel like you missed something important, and some of them, especially the ones near the end, are going to sit with you long after this video is done. So let's begin. Part 1. How Gravity Falls Came to Be. The Origins of a World Fact 1. Gravity Falls didn't start as a television show. It started as a feeling. Alex Hirsch, the man who created every single corner of the Mystery Shack and the forest surrounding it, grew up in Piedmont, California. Between the ages of 9 and 13, he and his twin sister Ariel would go stay with their great-aunt Lois at her cabin deep in the woods. Those summers, the particular quality of light through old pine trees, the strange quiet of a place that operates on its own internal logic, and the sense that adults had secrets they weren't sharing, became the emotional foundation for everything Gravity Falls would eventually become. That feeling didn't leave him. It just waited. Fact 2. The earliest version of what would become Gravity Falls existed as a series of sticky notes. Hirsch drew out his ideas on them. 2 kids, a tourist trap, a mystery, a con artist great-uncle, before any studio had expressed interest. The show was something he'd been building in his mind for years before he had anywhere to put it. When he eventually got the chance to pitch it, the core of the show was already there. The sticky notes just helped him see it. Fact 3. Alex Hirsch didn't initially set out to make a Disney show. He was working at Cartoon Network at the time, serving as a writer and storyboard artist on the marvelous misadventures of Flapjack. A Disney executive named Mike Moon cold-called him after seeing one of Hirsch's student films from his time at the California Institute of the Arts. Moon asked him if he'd be interested in developing a show for Disney Channel. Hirsch said yes, and then spent the next several years wondering if his strange little mystery show about twin kids and a con artist would actually survive contact with the network. Fact 4. Before Gravity Falls was greenlit, Hirsch was required to help develop another Disney Channel show first. That show was Fish Hooks, an animated series about fish living in an aquarium pet store. Hirsch helped develop and directed the pilot. It was part of the deal. Fish hooks in exchange for the chance to make his own show. He fulfilled the bargain, and in December 2010, Gravity Falls was officially greenlit for full production. Fact 5. When Hirsch described his show in its earliest pitch form, he called it a combination of Twin Peaks and The Simpsons. Those 2 reference points tell you almost everything you need to know about what Gravity Falls turned out to be. From Twin Peaks, it took the sense of a small, strange town sitting on top of something dark and inexplicable. From The Simpsons, it took the idea that animation could be genuinely funny and emotionally grounded at the same time, that it didn't have to choose between being for children and being intelligent. The combination produced something that belongs to neither of those categories, and both of them simultaneously. Fact 6. Alex Hirsch's grandpa was also named Stan, the character of Grunkle Stan, on it with his gold chain, his stories that may or may not be entirely true, and his capacity for love disguised as gruffness, was directly inspired by this real man. Hirsch has said his grandfather would probably be proud that his grandson found a way to make a living by continuing his tradition of making things up. The gold necklace Stan wears in the show is a direct reference to his grandfather's own gold chain. Fact 7. The character of Seuss, the beloved handyman of the Mystery Shack whose name is consistently mispronounced as Zeus by nearly everyone he meets, was based on a real friend of Hirsch's from college. His friend's name was Jesus, pronounced in the Spanish way Jesus, and he was exactly as described in Hirsch's own words: friendly, lovable, and deeply strange. The kind of person who just gravitates toward being helpful, who hangs around even after the obvious reasons to stay have passed. Hirsch loved him and put him in the show. Fact 8. Mabel's beloved pet pig Waddles exists because of Ariel Hirsch's childhood obsession with pigs. Alex's twin sister always desperately wanted a pet pig. She built what can only be described as a pig shrine in her room, filled with pig-related objects, pig figurines, pig posters. She never actually got the pig. Her brother gave her one in animated form and named him Waddles, and made him one of the warmest and most consistently joyful details in a show full of warmth. Fact 9. Gravity Falls premiered on June 15, 2012 on Disney Channel. It was later moved to Disney XD partway through Season 2, a decision made by the network while the show was still being produced. Now, Hirsch and his team weren't informed about the move until halfway through making the season. There was no coordinated discussion about whether the tone would change. The show just moved networks and kept being exactly what it was. Fact 10. The number 618 appears throughout Gravity Falls in various places, on stamps, on signs, in background details. That number is Alex Hirsch's birthday. He was born on June 18th, which is 6/18. He hid it in the show the way a painter might sign their name in the corner of a canvas. Quietly, repeatedly, and with the reasonable confidence that someone would eventually notice. Fact 11. Alex Hirsch voices multiple major characters in the show. Grunkle Stan, Suze, Old Man McGucket, Bill Cipher, and a long list of minor characters, monsters, and background voices. The fact that he voices both the main antagonist and the character who ultimately defeats him, Bill Cipher and Stan Pines, is one of those details that feels more meaningful the longer you sit with it. Fact 12. Before the show was titled Gravity Falls, the town was briefly considered under other names. The title Gravity Falls was chosen both for the way it sounds and for what it means. Gravity, the force that pulls things down, that grounds you, that makes falling inevitable. Falls, the thing that happens when gravity wins. The town's name is also a subtle description of what happens to every major character in the series. Things fall, gravity wins, and then, in some cases, they get back up. Fact 13. Alex Hirsch chose Oregon as the setting for Gravity Falls for a very specific reason. He'd spent a summer there during college, but working in Portland as a storyboard artist for the animation studio Laika. The quality of Oregon's forests, dense, old, strange, full of moss and shadow, stuck with him the way real places sometimes do. When he needed a setting for a show about a town that sits at the edge of the explainable, he went back to that feeling. Oregon kept showing up in his head, so he put it in the show. Fact 14. The real town of Gravity Falls, Oregon, actually exists in a sense. There is a Gravity Falls, Oregon, a small area with that name, though it bears very little resemblance to the fictional version in the show. There is, however, a real roadside attraction in Piercy, California called Confusion Hill, which inspired some elements of the Mystery Shack, and which later became the permanent home of the real-life Bill Cipher statue after the Cipher hunt concluded. Life following fiction, following life, in the pattern that Gravity Falls tends to produce. Fact 15. Jon Stewart, the former host of The Daily Show, was one of the two people who convinced Alex Hirsch to return for a second season. Hirsch had been exhausted after season 1 and had genuinely considered ending the show on a cliffhanger. Stewart approached him and told him his kids loved the show. The other person was Patrick McHale, the creator of Over the Garden Wall, who told Hirsch simply and directly, "Look, after that cliffhanger, you've got to finish it." Two separate voices from completely different corners of creative life, and Hirsch listened to both of them. The world is better for it. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you are and what time it is. Could be midnight in London, could be 3 in the afternoon in Tokyo. Wherever you are, I'm glad you're here. And if this is doing its job, maybe think about hitting that subscribe button before you get too comfortable. It really does help more than you know. Now, back to Gravity Falls. Part 2, the opening credits. A roadmap to the whole show. Fact 16. From the very first episode, Alex Hirsch hid a secret message in the opening credits of Gravity Falls. It's a brief flash of letters that appears for less than a second at the end of the theme song, Most people on their first watch assume it's visual decoration, an atmospheric flourish. It's not. Apply a Caesar cipher to those letters. Shift each one back by 3 positions in the alphabet. And you get the message: Stan is not what he seems. This message sat in the opening of every episode of Season 1, telling viewers the entire arc of the show before it had even unfolded. Fact 17. The Caesar cipher message wasn't the only thing hidden in the opening theme. There is also a reversed audio message, a whisper that plays during the theme but can only be heard if you slow the audio down and play it backwards. In Season 1, that whispered backwards message says, 3 letters back. That's the key, the cipher key embedded in the song itself. Hirsch didn't just hide the code, he hid the solution to the code in the same place. The answer was always inside the question. Fact 18. The cipher system used for the end-of-episode cryptograms changes as the show progresses. Episodes 1 through 6 of Season 1 use a Caesar cipher, where each letter is shifted 3 positions backward. Episodes 7 through 13 switch to an @bash cipher, where A becomes Z, B becomes Y, the entire alphabet mirrors itself. The backwards whisper in the theme changes accordingly. It now says, switch A with Z. Then from episodes 14 through 19, the system shifts again to an A1Z26 cipher, where each letter corresponds to its numerical position in the alphabet, A being 1, B being 2, and so on. The backwards whisper updates again, 26 letters. Fact 19. When Season 2 begins, the cipher system upgrades to a Visionaire cipher, a significantly more complex encryption method that requires not just an alphabet key, but a specific keyword to decode. Visionaire ciphers are multi-layered. Rather than shifting every letter by the same amount, the keyword determines a different shift for each individual character. The backwards whisper in the Season 2 opening changes to Key Visionaire, and the keywords themselves are hidden inside the episodes, in background details, on signs, on chalkboards, in places where you'd only notice them if you were looking for exactly that kind of thing. Fact 20. The very first Season 2 episode, Scary OK, has a keyword of whittle, which can be spotted written on the wall of Gideon's prison cell. Using that keyword with the Visionaire cipher on the encrypted end credits text gives you the message, welcome back. The show was waiting for its audience. It knew they'd been looking forward to this. Fact 21. In the opening credits, there is a brief flash of a circular diagram surrounded by symbols. A pine tree, a shooting star, a question mark, a pair of glasses, a 6-fingered hand, a llama, an ice bag, a pentagram, a crescent moon, a heart. In the very center of this wheel is a yellow triangle with a single eye. Most viewers who noticed this on their first watch had no idea what it meant. It's the cipher wheel, sometimes called the Bill Cipher zodiac, and it contains a symbol for every major character in the show. The pine tree is Dipper, the shooting star is Mabel, the 6-fingered hand is Ford, the question mark is Seuss, the llama is Pacifica Northwest, the ice bag is McGucket, the glasses belong to Gideon, the pentagram is Bill Cipher himself, or more precisely, the vessel he most recently occupied. Fact 22. The cipher wheel appears in the opening credits from the very first episode of Season 1. This matters enormously. Pacifica Northwest doesn't appear until Episode 9. Ford Pines doesn't appear until Season 2. McGucket's full backstory isn't told until deep in Season 2. And yet their symbols are all there in the opening, arranged around the triangle, waiting. Hirsch had planned the entire story before the first episode aired. The ending was encoded in the beginning. Fact 23. One of the most unsettling details in the opening credits is also one of the most easily overlooked. Somewhere in the sequence, if you look very carefully at the forest during the establishing shot of Gravity Falls, you can see small glowing dots among the trees. They look like fireflies at first, or just a lighting effect. They are eyes. Something is watching the town from the forest. This detail was placed there from the very beginning, before Bill Cipher had even been introduced as a character. Fact 24. The photographs and Polaroids that flutter across the screen during the opening credits include images of every major villain the twins will face during the show. The Gnomes, the Summerween Monster, the Hand Witch, Gideon, Blendin Blandin. These were all there from the start, announcing the season before a single episode had aired. For a first-time viewer, they're just strange and slightly creepy images. For someone on a rewatch, they're a complete list of everything that's coming. Fact 25. In the opening credits of Season 2, after Weirdmageddon begins, the opening changes dramatically. The normal theme plays, but everything is corrupted. Bill Cipher has replaced most of the familiar imagery. The friendly, adventurous tone of the original credits twists into something stranger and more menacing. And hidden in that corrupted Season 2 opening is a new backwards whisper, a different message from the one that began the show. The new message is, "I'm watching you, nerds." Fact 26, the backwards message at the very end of the series finale, in the credits of Weirdmageddon 3 Take Back the Falls, says, "Goodbye, Gravity Falls." It's the last thing the show whispers before it closes. Not loudly, not with fanfare, not in a moment you'd notice without looking. Just a quiet goodbye, coded and backwards, the way the show has always communicated its most important things. Fact 27. Alex Hirsch makes a cameo appearance in the opening credits himself. At his chin and the lower portion of his face can be spotted among the photographs that flutter through the air during the sequence. He's been there the whole time, hidden, just like everything else, present without being obvious. You'd have to be specifically looking for him to find him. Fact 28. The very opening shot of the show, the first image you see before any episode begins, is a hand emerging from fog, holding the journal with the six-fingered emblem on its cover. Most viewers assume this is meant to be Dipper's hand. It isn't. Dipper only has 5 fingers on each hand, the standard number for non-animated characters in the Gravity Falls universe. The hand in the opening has 6 fingers. It's Ford's hand, the author's hand. The show was always Ford's story as much as Dipper's, and it told you that before you even knew his name. At Part 3, Dipper Pines Altae. Everything you never noticed, of Fact 29. Dipper's real name is Mason Pines. It was never spoken aloud during the entire run of the show. His on-screen real name appears exactly once, written messily on a piece of paper that Mabel spots in the episode Dungeons, Dungeons, and More Dungeons when Dipper is spending increasing amounts of time with Ford. The name Mason was officially confirmed in the real-life publication of Gravity Falls, Journal 3 in 2016, where Dipper tells Ford his name quietly and privately, in one of the more genuinely sweet moments in any of the show's tie-in material. Fact 30. The name Mason is not a random choice. In folklore and secret society mythology, Freemasonry is one of the most famous and enduring examples of a secretive organization built on hidden knowledge, coded symbols, and initiation into deeper truths. Gravity Falls is, at its core, a story about a child who gains access to forbidden knowledge and is changed by it. Mason Pines. The name was always a subtle signal about the nature of his character arc. Fact 31. Dipper's nickname comes from a birthmark on his forehead shaped like the Big Dipper constellation. He's been hiding it under his bangs since he was about 5 years old, after other kids made fun of him for it. The hat with the pine tree logo, the one he picks out of the gift shop in the very first episode, serves partially as another way to cover it. He picks that specific hat not just because it's free, but because it sits low on his forehead. The show is careful about these details. Fact 32. Dipper was born 5 minutes after his sister Mabel. She is technically the older twin, by exactly 5 minutes. This comes up rarely, but matters in the context of the show's twin dynamics. Mabel is the older twin who is also the more emotionally intuitive one. Dipper is the younger twin who is also the more intellectually driven one. The reversal of typical older sibling expectations is part of what makes their dynamic interesting. She's older, but he's frequently trying to take on the role of protector. Fact 33. Jason Ritter, who voices Dipper, is the son of the late actor John Ritter, best known for his role in Three's Company. Jason Ritter auditioned for the role and was cast largely on the strength of how he captured Dipper's particular brand of earnest awkwardness. The voice is precise, not a child trying to sound smart, but a smart child trying to sound older than he is, which is a much more specific and harder thing to achieve. Fact 34. Dipper is listed as being born on August 31st, 1999 in the official show materials. The events of the series take place over the summer of 2012, making him 12 years old at the start and 13 by the series finale. The specific detail of his birthday being August 31st means he's technically a summer child, born at the tail end of summer, spending the most formative summer of his life uncovering the kinds of truths most adults never encounter. Fact 35. Dipper has a habit of clicking his pen repeatedly when he's in deep thought. This is a small character animation detail added by the animators and mentioned in the episode Carpet Diem. It's not plot relevant, it doesn't come up very often, and it's exactly the kind of specific, grounded character behavior that makes the show feel inhabited rather than drawn. Fact 36. The show's creator, Alex Hirsch, has spoken about a set of rules he established at the beginning of production regarding Dipper and Mabel's relationship. Because writers frequently and incorrectly assumed that the two didn't actually care for each other or would casually drift into antagonism, Hirsch had to codify their bond explicitly. They love each other completely, they will always find their way back to each other, and any tension between them must resolve in a way that honors that foundation. The show never lets them truly fall apart. That rule was structural. Fact 37. In the episode Dipper vs. Manliness, Dipper spends much of the episode attempting to impress a group of Manitors. Minotaur-like creatures who define masculinity in the most aggressive, simple terms possible. By the end of the episode, Dipper rejects their definition entirely. He decides he'd rather be who he actually is than perform a version of strength he doesn't believe in. For a show ostensibly aimed at 12-year-olds, that's a fairly sophisticated thing to communicate, and it communicates it without a single piece of accompanying lecture. Fact 38. Dipper has been shown to be a finalist in 3 separate spelling bee competitions back at Piedmont Middle School. He also has a habit of making extremely detailed lists and plans, a tendency the show both celebrates and gently mocks. Yet his relationship with preparedness and procedure is shown to be both a strength and a limitation. He is at his best when he combines his planning with Mabel's spontaneous instincts, and at his worst when he forgets to actually connect with the people around him while in pursuit of the next answer. Fact 39. Throughout the series, Dipper gradually becomes the closest thing Ford has to a kindred spirit among the new generation of the Pines family. Ford recognizes his curiosity and his appetite for the strange and the unexplained. Their relationship, the older researcher and the young one just beginning to understand what the pursuit of knowledge actually costs, is one of the quieter emotional threads running through Season 2. It's also, the show eventually makes clear, somewhat of a cautionary story. Ford's path is not one Dipper should simply eye. Fact 40. In the series finale, after Weirdmageddon is resolved and the summer ends, Jason Ritter is confirmed as the only voice actor to appear in every single episode of the entire series run. Dipper and Mabel are also confirmed as the only 2 characters to appear in every episode. The show is, at its root, their story. Everything else, the mythology, the ciphers, the dimensional horrors, the 30-year family drama, is the world their summer exists inside. Part 4. Mabel Pines, The Heart in Plain Sight. Fact 41. Mabel Pines is based almost entirely on Alex Hirsch's twin sister Ariel. The boy craziness, the absolute commitment to emotional honesty, the love of pigs, the sweaters, yet the grappling hook, these are all rooted in a real person who was generous enough to let her brother put her on television. Ariel Hirsch has spoken about this in her own AMAs and interviews, generally with warmth and the kind of cheerful willingness that, if you know the show well, sounds exactly like Mabel. Fact 42. Mabel is voiced by Kristen Schaal, who was best known at the time as Mel on Flight of the Conchords and as a correspondent on The Daily Show. Schaal's voice acting is one of the more joyfully unhinged performances in animated television. She commits completely to Mabel's enthusiasm, makes her feel genuinely childlike without making her feel simple, and manages to convey emotional depth in moments that could easily have been played as pure comedy. Fact 43. Mabel was born 5 minutes before Dipper, making her the technically older twin. However, and this is a consistent detail throughout the show, She tends to occupy an emotionally younger space, more impulsive, more present, less concerned with planning, and more concerned with the moment she's actually in. She is not less intelligent than her brother, she simply applies her intelligence to different things. Connecting with people, finding joy, understanding what matters. These are not trivial skills. Fact 44. Mabel's sweaters are not randomly chosen. They track with the emotional content of the episodes she's in. Her sweater with a light bulb on it appears in Into the Bunker, the episode where the hidden bunker is discovered. Her sweater with Scout's Honor on the front and secretly crossed fingers on the back appears in an episode where she lies to Stan to get him to face a fear. The wardrobe department put thought into this, and the detail is consistent enough that dedicated viewers eventually began cataloging Mabel's sweaters and cross-referencing them with episode events. Fact 45. In the episode The Time Traveler's Pig, Mabel wins Waddles at the Mystery Fair by throwing a ball through a small hoop. Dipper has the opportunity to use a time travel device he's discovered to go back and prevent her from winning Waddles, which would allow him to undo a mistake he made. He ultimately chooses not to. He lets Mabel keep the pig. And this is presented as a significant character moment, and it is. It's the first clear demonstration that Dipper's love for his sister is deeper than his desire to fix things, which is his most fundamental drive. Fact 46. Mabel's full name is Mabel Pines. Her name and Dipper's real name, Mason, are both 5 letters long, both begin with M, and both carry connotations of craftsmanship and stone. Mason means a worker with stone. Mabel is an older name with roots in the Latin amabilis, meaning lovable. Both names are slightly old-fashioned in a contemporary context, which matches the slightly out-of-time feeling of the show's setting, a small Oregon town that seems to exist somewhat outside the normal flow of the 21st century. Fact 47. In the episode Irrational Treasure, Mabel is officially made a United States Congresswoman by Quentin Tremblay, revealed in the episode to be the 8th-and-a-half President of the United States, who had been living in a peanut brittle preserve state under the ground for decades. Her political platform is Legalize Everything. The episode is played entirely for comedy, but Mabel takes her role with complete sincerity, which is exactly how she approaches everything. Fact 48. Mabel's grappling hook, her chosen gift from Grunkle Stan in the first episode after they save the Mystery Shack, becomes one of the show's recurring visual motifs. She uses it again and again throughout the series to swing across gaps, escape from danger, and reach things she couldn't reach otherwise. The grappling hook was her choice, and she picked it from the gift shop while Dipper picked a hat. The hat is about identity. The grappling hook is about reaching. The show, as usual, meant both. Fact 49. In Weirdmageddon 2, Escape from Reality, Mabel is trapped inside a reality bubble constructed by Bill Cipher that shows her a version of the world exactly as she would wish it to be. Permanent summer, permanent freedom from growing up, a world where Gravity Falls never has to end. The horror of the episode is that Mabel almost accepts it. Not because she's weak, but because the offer is perfectly calibrated to her actual fears. That summer will end, that growing up means losing the people she loves, that change is loss. Bill understood her well enough to use the truest thing about her against her. Fact 50. Mabel Pines is one of the few animated female characters in Disney Channel history who was allowed to be enthusiastically, overtly interested in boys without that being framed as a problem or a character flaw to overcome. She crushes hard, and often she is unapologetically romantic, and the show never punishes her for it. Her emotional expressiveness is consistently portrayed as a strength, not an embarrassment. This was, according to Hirsch, not entirely without friction from the network, but it survived intact. Part 5. Grunkle Stan. 30 Years of Secrets. Fact 51. Grunkle Stan's real name is Stanley Pines. For the entire first season and the first portion of Season 2, viewers, and the characters within the show, believe his name is Stanford Pines. Stanford is actually the name of his twin brother. Stan has been living under his brother's identity for 30 years, maintaining the fiction so thoroughly that he faked his own death under his real name in a separate state to avoid complications. He is, by any reasonable standard, one of the most committed long-term con artists in animated television history. Fact 52. The Mystery Shack's original name was not the Mystery Shack. When Stanley first moved into his brother's house in Gravity Falls and started charging tourists to look at exhibits, he tried several names. He first called it the Murder Hut. That didn't go over well with visitors. The name The Mystery Shack came later, after some trial and error, and the name worked exactly because it promises something without specifying what. A mystery. It's been there the whole time. The building is a mystery. The man who runs it is a mystery. The name, it turns out, was always honest. Fact 53. Stan was born in Glass Shard Beach, New Jersey. His father, Philbrick Pines, owned a pawn shop. Both Stan and his brother Ford grew up poor and quick-witted in a town that didn't offer much in the way of upward mobility. Their dreams, a boat named the Stan-O-War, a life of adventure and travel, were the dreams of children who needed something bigger than their circumstances to believe in. Fact 54. Stanley Pines and Stanford Pines share a first name. Their father liked the name Stan and momentarily forgot, in the shock of realizing he had twin sons, that he'd need to come up with two of them. Both boys ended up named Stan. One Stanley, one Stanford. The show acknowledges this is a family trait of mild chaos and insufficient forward planning, which is probably fair. Fact 55. Stan has a tattoo on his shoulder. It's a red symbol, a triangular shape connected to rays, resembling the activation symbol associated with the dimensional portal in the Mystery Shack's basement. This tattoo appears early in the show, in the short Stan's Tattoo from the Dipper's Guide to the Unexplained miniseries. And it raised enormous speculation from viewers about what it meant before the portal storyline was fully revealed. The tattoo is a mark of Stan's commitment to the mission he'd dedicated 30 years of his life to, getting his brother back. Fact 56. In the early days of his time in Gravity Falls, Stan attempted to demonstrate some of Ford's legitimate inventions to paying tourists. None of them worked correctly in his hands. So he improvised, he made up exhibits, and he displayed junk and told people it was supernatural. He found that tourists would believe almost anything if you said it with enough confidence and charged them admission. The Mystery Shack, one of the show's most beloved settings, began as a complete fiction constructed by a desperate man with no other options. Fact 57. Stan carries a cane topped with a black billiard 8-ball. This detail is consistent throughout the series and is part of his signature look alongside the fez, the bow tie, and the gold chain. The 8-ball cane never gets a direct in-show explanation, which is exactly the kind of detail Hirsch leaves alone. Some things about Grunkle Stan are allowed to just be. Fact 58. In the episode Dreamscaperers, when Gideon sends Bill Cipher into Stan's mind to find the combination to a safe, Dipper follows and ends up witnessing Stan's memories. He sees a memory in which Stan calls him useless. This is briefly devastating to Dipper, but the full memory, when viewed without being cut short, reveals that Stan then says, to himself, after Dipper has walked away, that the kid will go far. Stan's gruffness and his love are shown to be completely separate things operating at the same time. He is not cruel. He is a man from a generation that learned to keep love mostly private. Fact 59. Stan's arc in the series finale is arguably one of the most emotionally complete character resolutions in Disney animation. To defeat Bill Cipher, Stan must allow Ford to erase his memory using McGucket's memory gun. Every memory Stan has, gone in an instant, sacrificed so that Bill will enter the wrong mind. Stan agrees, and he goes into it knowing what it costs. And what he says, in the final moments before his memory goes, is that protecting his family is what he was meant to do. Then he wakes up, and he doesn't know who anyone is. Mabel shows him her scrapbook, and slowly, image by image, he comes back. Fact 60. After the events of the finale, Stan and Ford agree to fulfill the dream they had as children, sailing around the world on a boat, looking for anomalies and adventure. They renamed the boat the Stan-O-War II, a callback to the original Stan-O-War they'd built together as teenagers before everything went wrong. They get the ending they were supposed to have 50 years earlier. The show gives it to them quietly, in an end credits sequence without ceremony. They're just two old men on a boat, laughing at a sea monster, finally doing what they always said they would. Part 6. Ford Pines, the man behind the journals. Fact 61. Stanford Philbrick Pines was born with polydactyly, a rare condition that causes extra digits to grow on the hands or feet. Ford has 6 fingers on each hand. This is not merely a physical detail or a visual quirk. It is the central fact of his entire psychological history. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood in New Jersey with 6 fingers on each hand meant he was different from everyone around him, and different in a way that was visible and strange. He was bullied. He was mocked. The only person who never cared was his brother Stan. Fact 62. Ford's full name is Stanford Philbrick Pines. Both he and Stan carry their father's name, Philbrick, as a middle name, which tells you something about Philbrick Pines and how he thought about legacy. Ford is voiced by J.K. Simmons, who plays him as a man of enormous intelligence and enormous blind spots in almost equal measure. Simmons plays Ford's arrogance with a precision that makes it feel earned rather than cartoonish, which is the only way the character works. Fact 63. Ford's turtleneck, one of his most recognizable design elements, was directly inspired by the red turtleneck that Carl Sagan famously wore. Carl Sagan, the astronomer, author of Cosmos, one of the most prominent scientific communicators of the 20th century, was chosen as a style reference for Ford because both men share a particular kind of relationship with the mystery of the universe. Both are consumed by the desire to understand what's really out there. Both communicate that desire with an intensity that can feel disconnected from the smaller, more immediate world around them. Fact 64. Ford came to Gravity Falls because it had the highest concentration of supernatural anomalies anywhere in the United States. He had been studying the geography of the unexplained, mapping where strange things clustered, and the readings from a small forested area in Oregon were off every scale he had. He moved there, built a house, and started writing. Journal 1 was the beginning, then Journal 2, then Journal 3. The further he went, the deeper into the mystery he fell, and the less he could see the edges of it. Fact 65. Ford discovered the Cipher wheel, the zodiac symbol that eventually becomes central to the attempt to defeat Bill, carved into a cave wall in Gravity Falls. He also found, in that cave, the incantations used to summon Bill Cipher. He read them aloud. He later describes this as one of the most consequential mistakes of his life, being so hungry for answers that he read words he didn't understand, called a thing he didn't know was waiting, and let it in. Fact 66. Bill Cipher introduced himself to Ford as a muse, a being that had inspired one great intellectual mind per century, offering them the answers they were looking for in exchange for a simple partnership. Ford was flattered. He was also a lonely, isolated genius who had spent years in a strange town with almost no one who could engage with him at his level. Bill found the exact shape of Ford's longing and stepped into it perfectly. The entire manipulation was that precise. Fact 67. That Ford's partner during the construction of the dimensional portal was Fiddleford McGucket, a brilliant mechanic and computer engineer Ford had met at college and perceived as a kindred spirit. McGucket was the first person to actually look into the portal and see what was on the other side. What he saw caused him to immediately quit the project and eventually build the memory gun specifically to erase the memory of what he'd witnessed. Ford was so committed to the project that he didn't fully internalize what this meant until much later. Fact 68. When the portal was accidentally activated during the fight between Stan and Ford, Ford was pushed through it. He spent approximately 30 years lost in alternate dimensions, unable to return. The show's Journal 3 tie-in book details some of what he encountered during those 30 years, including a dimension described as the dimension of drifting excrement, which is exactly as unpleasant as it sounds, and an encounter with an oracle who told him something cryptic about the man who would save him. He didn't know until he emerged that the man the oracle described was his brother. Fact 69. Ford has a metal plate in his head. This detail is first mentioned in The Last Mabelcorn and becomes plot relevant in the finale. The metal plate prevents Bill Cipher from entering Ford's mind directly to access the equation he carries that could collapse the barrier between dimensions. It becomes the crucial fact that makes the final plan possible. Because Bill can't get into Ford's mind, Stan must impersonate him, and Bill must be tricked into entering the wrong twin's consciousness. Fact 70. But Ford is the only character who shakes hands with Bill Cipher voluntarily. In the show's mythology, a handshake with Bill constitutes a deal. It gives Bill some degree of access to that person's mind and creates an ongoing entanglement. Ford's handshake with Bill is the original deal, the one that set everything in motion. It's visually referenced multiple times throughout the series. It is also in the show's moral architecture, the image of someone being charmed into a mistake that will cost them decades. Part 7. The Stan Twins, a story about brothers. Fact 71. The perpetual motion machine that Ford built as a high school student, and that Stanley accidentally broke, was designed to get Ford into West Coast Tech, a prestigious university on the other side of the country. And it was the ticket to Ford's entire future as he imagined it. Stan broke it. Whether it was an accident or, as Ford briefly believed, and the show leaves ambiguous, something more complicated, a part of Stan that couldn't watch his brother leave, the machine broke, and the future it was supposed to open shattered with it. Fact 72. After the perpetual motion machine was destroyed, their father, Philbrick Pines, did something that echoes through every subsequent event in the series. He disowned Stan and threw him out, not Ford. Stan, the boy who didn't win the scholarship, the boy who didn't have the 6 fingers and the stratospheric IQ, the boy who had just, through one careless moment, made his brother's future impossible. Philbrick wasn't a villain in any operatic sense. But he was a poor man from a hard town who had bet everything on one of his sons and watched that bet collapse. But what he did to Stanley shaped the entire course of the following 5 decades. Fact 73. Stan spent years after being thrown out trying to make his fortune through various business ventures, all of which failed. A catalog of his failed endeavors, which are glimpsed briefly in the show and expanded on in supplemental material, includes a number of items that are simultaneously sad and very funny. He sold novelty decorative rocks. He participated in something involving forklifts in a way the show wisely doesn't detail further. He got involved in at least 2 separate scams that resulted in legal difficulties. He was by most measures a failure in the world's accounting, and yet he kept going. Fact 74. When Ford, years later, sent Stan a postcard asking him to come to Gravity Falls, it wasn't an apology or a reconciliation. It was a request for help with a practical problem. Ford needed Stan to take one of the journals and hide it far away. Stan arrived hoping his brother had called him to make things right between them. Ford hadn't. He'd called him because he needed someone he could trust with a specific task. Stan was devastated. They fought. And in the course of that fight, Ford went through the portal, and Stan accidentally activated the device that started a 30-year countdown. Fact 75. The moment Stan realizes what he's done, that his brother has vanished into another dimension because of a fight that Stan is partially responsible for, is played quietly in the show's flashback sequences, and it is one of the most affecting moments in the series. Yet he stands in the basement, alone, in a house that isn't his, in a town he doesn't know, with his brother gone. And he decides he's going to get him back. Not someday, not if he can. He decides, and 30 years of impossible, unglamorous, utterly committed labor begins. Fact 76. The boat they built together as teenagers, the Stan War, appears in the show in multiple ways. In the second episode, The Legend of the Gobblewonker, Stan wants to take Dipper and Mabel on a fishing trip, and they find a wrecked old fishing boat named Stan War. This same name appears in the backstory episode as the name of the boat the brothers were building together before everything fell apart. The callback is so quiet that most viewers miss it entirely on their first watch. But it's there, the ghost of the boat, the ghost of a plan they never got to execute. Fact 77. In A Tale of Two Stans, there is a brief background detail that most viewers miss. Written on the wall of the space where Stan breaks through to find the original Stan War are the words, "Blendin was here." This is a joke about the time-traveling character Blendin Blandin, who can appear anywhere in the timeline, but it's also a reminder of just how thoroughly the show cross-references itself. If Blendin was there, it means the timeline of the Pines brothers' story intersected with the show's time travel mythology somewhere along the line. Fact 78. Ford's decision to call upon his brother rather than anyone else when the portal needed to be hidden and someone needed to be trusted is the detail that makes Stan's sacrifice legible. Ford didn't call a colleague. He didn't reach out to a professional. He called the one person in the world he trusted unconditionally, even though he had not spoken to that person in years and had parted from him on catastrophically bad terms. That call and everything it implies about what brothers mean to each other despite everything is the engine that drives the entire series. Fact 79. The episode A Tale of Two Stands set a new audience record for Disney XD at the time of its broadcast, with 1.91 million viewers and a 0.4 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic. It was later beaten by the series finale itself, Weirdmageddon 3 Take Back the Falls, which drew 2.47 million viewers and set new all-time network records for Disney XD across multiple audience demographics. The episodes with the most mythology are consistently the episodes that drew the most viewers. As the audience wanted the deep material, they had been waiting for it. Fact 80. When Stan and Ford finally reconcile, in the extended sequence during the finale where they are trapped together in a cell by Bill and forced to wait together with nowhere to hide from each other, Ford thanks his brother for the first time. He says quietly and directly the thing he needed to say for 50 years. The show doesn't milk this. It doesn't hold on it for sentiment. It lets the moment happen at normal conversational speed, the way real reconciliations usually do, without music telling you how to feel. Part 8. Bill Cipher, the ancient thing in the triangle fact. 81. Bill Cipher is over 1 trillion years old. This is not hyperbole or approximation. It is the figure given in the official show materials and confirmed by Alex Hirsch through multiple sources. He predates the formation of Earth's solar system. He predates most of the structures in the known universe. He is not ancient in the way that mountains or civilizations are ancient. He is ancient in the way that mathematical constants are ancient. He has simply always been there. Operating, planning, wanting. Fact 82. Bill came from a dimension called Euclidia, sometimes referred to as the second dimension. Euclidia was a world of flat, two-dimensional minds, a plane of pure thought and abstraction. Bill was different from everyone else there because he was the only being in Euclidia who could perceive the third dimension. He could see depth where no one else could. And rather than sharing this vision with his people, rather than helping them understand what he understood, he destroyed his entire home dimension to liberate them. He has since convinced himself that this was a gift. He burned his own world and everyone in it, including his parents, and called it generosity. Fact 83 by Bill's real name is completely unpronounceable by any being in the third dimension. According to the show's mythology, hearing his true name would cause the listener to evaporate, apparently with an expression of horror and ecstasy on their face. He chose the name Bill Cipher as a working identity, specifically because his actual name was logistically inconvenient for doing business. This is presented as a completely matter-of-fact administrative decision, which somehow makes it more disturbing. Fact 84. Bill Cipher is voiced by Alex Hirsch, who gives him a fast, gleeful, slightly southern-inflected energy that makes him sound like a game show host who has been awake for 1 trillion years and is running purely on the electricity of his own cruelty. The voice was a deliberate choice. Charming, immediate, impossible to fully dislike, even when he is saying horrifying things. Bill sounds like he's having fun. He usually is. That's the problem. Fact 85. In the show's mythology, making physical contact with Bill Cipher, specifically shaking his hand, constitutes a deal. It grants him some degree of access to that person's mind and creates an ongoing connection. This is why the fans' frequent joke about shaking Bill's hand carries actual narrative weight within the show. When Ford shook Bill's hand, he wasn't just making a deal in the transactional sense. He was opening a door. Fact 86. Bill was originally conceived as a much smaller character, a minor figure who would invade Dipper's dreams occasionally and shout conspiracy theories. That version of the character was discarded early in production, and Bill was rebuilt as the central antagonist of the entire series. He was also originally designed to be green. Alex Hirsch changed the color to yellow because he was concerned that green might invite too many jokes about leaves. Yellow, triangular, with a single eye and a top hat, a creature that looks like a conspiracy theory dressed up for an event. Fact 87. Bill originally had a villain song titled It's Gonna Get Weird. The song was cut during production due to time constraints. But a demo version recorded by Neil Cicierega does exist and was released on Tumblr. Fans who have heard it describe it as exactly what you'd expect from Bill Cipher in full performance mode. Theatrical, slightly terrifying, and absolutely convinced of its own charm. Fact 88. In the months before Dreamscaperers aired, before Bill made his first major on-screen appearance as an active character, he was already an established presence in the show's online gaming ecosystem. An online game associated with Gravity Falls called Rumble's Revenge featured cryptograms in its code. Players who took the capital letters from all those cryptograms and arranged them correctly got the message, "My name is Bill." The show was introducing its villain in the background of a video game months before anyone knew who he was. Fact 89. Now, the Henchmaniacs, the gang of interdimensional demons who serve Bill during Weirdmageddon, were designed to look like a collection of wrongly shaped beings, each one a different kind of geometric or physical wrongness. They are said to be criminals and nightmares from multiple dimensions. The creature with 88 different faces is voiced by Alex Hirsch. And in one of the show's quieter gags, Bill tells it that it only has 87 different faces. The creature gets defensive and insists on the correct number. Fact 90. Bill Cipher's final words, the ones that play when you reverse the audio during his defeat in the series finale, are AXOLOTL, "My time has come to burn. I invoke the ancient power that I may return." The axolotl is a mysterious extra-dimensional entity referenced in the show's expanded mythology, that described in the Choose Your Own Adventure tie-in book as existing outside of time and having power sufficient to grant Bill some form of continuation beyond death. The Book of Bill, published in 2024, clarifies that Bill is now imprisoned in the Theraprism, a rehabilitation dimension located outside of space and time, and is showing absolutely no signs of changing his ways. Part 9. The Cipher Wheel, the Zodiac, and the Prophecy. Fact 91. The Cipher Wheel, Sabaj, also called the Bill Cipher Zodiac, contains exactly 10 symbols, each one corresponding to a specific person in the show's central circle. The pine tree represents Dipper Pines. The shooting star is Mabel Pines. The six-fingered hand is Ford Pines. The question mark stands for Saus Ramirez. The llama symbol belongs to Pacifica Northwest, a detail that surprised most viewers, since Pacifica doesn't join the heroes until fairly late in the series, but her symbol has been on the wheel from the very beginning. The ice bag represents Old Man McGucket. The glasses are Lil Gideon's symbol. The heart is Robbie's. The crescent moon symbol represents Wendy Corduroy. And the pentagram, though it appears to be Bill's symbol, actually represents the physical container of whoever Bill currently occupies. Fact 92. The prophecy associated with the cipher wheel states that when all 10 symbols are united in a specific configuration, forming a circuit of human energy, the combined force would be sufficient to defeat Bill's cipher permanently. The ancient residents of Gravity Falls discovered this fact through their own terrible encounters with Bill, painted it on cave walls, and left the warning for whoever came next. Ford found those paintings. He initially dismissed them as superstition. Fact 93. In the finale, the characters attempt to use the cipher wheel. They join hands in the correct formation. The energy builds. It looks for approximately 30 seconds like it might work. Then Stan and Ford begin to argue, their old, deep wound reopening at exactly the wrong moment, and the circuit breaks. The energy disperses. The wheel fails. The plan that the ancient people of Gravity Falls had left for them, the plan that had been in the opening credits from the very first episode, fails because of unresolved family drama. This is the show at its most honest about human nature. Fact 94. The ancient shaman of the pre-colonial Gravity Falls settlement, Modoc the Wise, had his own encounter with Bill Cipher, while Bill asked him to build a gateway between dimensions. Modoc tried Anaz. The result was made of twigs and did not work. When Modoc learned of the prophecy about what Bill's eventual success would mean for the world, he took dramatic action to avert it. He set himself on fire. The show notes this with the specific detail that Modoc apparently considered this a reasonable response to the situation, which tells you something about what it felt like to fully understand Bill Cipher's intentions. Fact 95. Each character's placement on the cipher wheel is not arbitrary. They are arranged in a specific order that has been analyzed extensively by fans, with the general conclusion that opposing positions on the wheel represent characters who mirror or contrast with each other in meaningful ways. Dipper and Ford are positioned in ways that reflect their similar hunger for knowledge. Stan and Suze are positioned in ways that reflect their shared role as caretakers and protectors of those around them. The wheel is not just a plot device, it's a map of how these people relate to each other. Fact 96. The fact that Pacifica Northwest has a place on the cipher wheel was, for most of Season 1, completely mysterious to viewers. She appears to be a minor antagonist, a spoiled rich girl who mocks Mabel. Nothing about her early appearances suggests she has any particular cosmic significance. Her inclusion on the wheel was the show signaling, from the very beginning, that she would grow into something the early version of her character did not suggest. The show trusted its own plan even when the plan wasn't visible yet. Fact 97. Bill Cipher does not consider the cipher wheel a serious threat. When the characters attempt to use it, he is briefly worried, then watches it fail and laughs. What ultimately defeats him is something entirely off the prophecies script, a plan improvised by two brothers working together, exploiting the fact that Bill can only read the surface of things and not the depths of the love between them. Bill has been planning for 1 trillion years and lost to something he couldn't calculate, a family that chose each other. Part 10. The Cryptogram System. Teaching kids cryptography in real time. Fact 98. Every single episode of Gravity Falls contains at least one end credits cryptogram. Not most episodes. Every episode. 40 episodes across 2 seasons, and every one of them has an encoded message waiting to be cracked. Some of those messages are jokes. Some are irrelevant commentary. Some are genuine foreshadowing of events that won't happen until episodes or even seasons later. Fact 99. The Caesar cipher is named after Julius Caesar, who is recorded to have used a simple letter shift encryption system in his military communications. Caesar shifted letters by 3 positions, exactly the shift used in Gravity Falls Season 1. Whether intentionally or as a coincidence, the show's first cipher system connects its mythology to one of the oldest documented uses of cryptography in Western history. Fact 100. The Atbash cipher, used in episodes 7 through 13, has even older roots than the Caesar cipher. It appears in the Hebrew Bible, most notably in the book of Jeremiah, and is believed to be one of the earliest known substitution ciphers ever documented. Gravity Falls was, in its coded messages, connecting its viewers to thousands of years of cryptographic history, a chain of secret keeping that stretches from ancient scribes to 2 kids in Oregon trying to understand what their great-uncle was building in the basement. Fact 101. The Visionaire cipher, introduced in Season 2, was considered essentially unbreakable for several centuries after its development in the 16th century. It was nicknamed Le Chiffre Indéchiffrable, the indecipherable cipher, by 19th century cryptographers. A cartoon aimed at children was using a system that stumped professional code breakers for 300 years. Hirsch was not joking about rewarding obsessive attention. Fact 102. In the episode Boys Crazy, Dipper and Stan discover that a song by the boy band Several Times contains a backwards hidden message telling Wendy to take Robbie back. This isn't just a plot detail. It's also the show's most direct in-story reference to its own use of backwards audio messages. The show was literally calling attention to its own technique, hiding it in plain sight as a story element. Fact 103. The decoded message from Not What He Seems, the episode where Stan's true identity is finally revealed, reads, "He's lying. Someone you know is hiding the truth." This message was in the credits waiting to be decoded before the episode aired. Fans who had been following the cryptograms would have read this confirmation before watching the episode. The show was always, in some sense, telling you what was about to happen, banking on the fact that knowing the message wasn't the same as understanding it. Fact 104. In the complete series DVD box set commentary, Alex Hirsch stated that there are still several codes hidden in the Real Life Journal 3 book that, to his knowledge, no fan has successfully solved as of his recording of those commentaries. This is an ongoing puzzle that has existed since the book's publication in 2016, sitting in the hands of anyone who owns a copy, waiting for someone with the right combination of obsession and patience to crack it. Fact 105. The online game Rumble's Revenge, associated with the show, contained its own hidden code system. Uppercase letters in the game's text, when extracted and arranged correctly, spelled out, "My name is Bill." This was Bill Cipher introducing himself to fans who were paying attention to the right things, months before he made his first major on-screen appearance. The villain arrived in the game before he arrived in the show. Fact 106. The show's interactive website, associated with the show's official presence during its original run, contained its own layer of puzzles and codes. One section of the site, when you highlighted seemingly blank white space, revealed numbers that turned out to be GPS coordinates. Those coordinates mapped to a real location in Oregon. The show was extending its mysteries beyond the screen and into the actual physical world, long before the Cipher Hunt made this a formal and massive event. Fact 107. In the source code of one of the show's related websites, during the countdown to the Not What He Seems episode premiere, developers hid an ASCII art image of a floppy disk accompanied by a cryptogram. Decoded, it reads, "Don't copy that floppy." It's a joke, but it's a joke hidden in a place only a certain kind of person would ever look, someone running the source code of a countdown website from a children's cartoon. For that person, there was a reward. Part 11. The Society of the Blind Eye and McGucket's Tragedy. Fact 108. The symbol of the Society of the Blind Eye, a crossed-out eye, appears in the background of Gravity Falls in various episodes, long before the organization is ever named or explained. It's on signs, on walls, in pieces of set dressing that viewers pass without registering. The society isn't revealed until Season 2, Episode 7. But its symbol has been present from nearly the beginning, waiting for the episode that would explain what it meant. Fact 109. The Society of the Blind Eye was founded by Old Man McGucket himself. He created the organization as a response to his own discovery of how unmanageable the memories of supernatural encounters could be. He invented a memory-erasing gun to help people forget the things they'd seen. The gnomes, the floating eyeballs, the creatures that didn't fit within ordinary reality. His intentions at the start were genuinely compassionate. He wanted to protect people from trauma. What his organization became was something else entirely. Fact 110. Fiddleford McGucket is a genius. This is established slowly and then all at once in the show, in the pattern of reveals that the series does best. But before he founded the Society of the Blind Eye, before his mind deteriorated from overuse of his own memory-erasing device, McGucket was one of the most brilliant engineers and computer scientists of his generation. He and Ford built the dimensional portal together. He was nationally recognized. He had a successful career and a family and a future. Fact 111. What McGucket saw when he accidentally looked into the dimensional portal, the thing that was on the other side, the thing that Bill Cipher was actually planning, caused him to quit the project immediately and begin working on a tool to make himself forget. He looked into the nightmare realm, and what he saw was sufficiently horrifying that he built a machine specifically to remove the experience from his mind. The show never fully describes what he saw. Some mysteries in Gravity Falls are left empty on purpose. Fact 112. Over decades of using the memory gun on himself, McGucket erased his own mind to the point of effective insanity. He became a feral, strange figure living in the woods outside Gravity Falls, speaking in nonsense, building increasingly bizarre contraptions from garbage. The townspeople regarded him as harmless but eccentric at best. His original genius was buried under layers of deliberate forgetting, until Dipper and Mabel found the Society's chamber and restored what had been taken. Fact 113. When McGucket's memories are restored in the episode Society of the Blind Eye, he has to process everything simultaneously: who he was, what he did, what he built, why he left, the decades he lost. The scene is brief and does not linger on his grief in any extended way, because Gravity Falls is a show that trusts its audience to carry the weight of implications. but the implication is enormous. This man lost his mind trying to forget something he'd seen. He built a machine to hurt himself, and it worked. Fact 114. After the events of the show, McGucket reconciles with his son, Tate. He uses his restored engineering genius to build a mech suit and help fight during Weirdmageddon. He starts a billion-dollar tech company. He moves into a mansion. This is presented slightly as a joke, but the show means it. McGucket gets to rebuild. Not everyone in Gravity Falls gets that, and the show knows it, so the ones who do are shown getting there fully. Fact 115. McGucket's Gobblewonker robot, the fake Loch Ness monster-style machine he built to drive people away from the lake during the episode The Legend of the Gobblewonker, reappears as part of the Shacktron in the series finale. McGucket specifically controls it by using his beard as a gear shift, the same way he described controlling the Gobblewonker in the original episode. The callbacks in this show are never accidental. Part 12. Minor characters, hidden cameos, and background secrets. Fact 116. Blendin Blandin. The time-traveling operative from the year 207,012 who first appears in The Time Traveler's Pig was actually present in Gravity Falls from the very first episode. He appears in Tourist Trapped hiding in the bushes. He appears as part of the audience in Headhunters. He is watching Old Man McGucket in The Legend of the Gobblewonker. He was watching the Pines family from the beginning, conducting surveillance for reasons the show eventually explains but doesn't fully exhaust. Fact 117. The words "Blendin was here" are written on the wall in A Tale of Two Stans, the wall that Stan breaks through to find the Stano warboat. Blendin Blandin has apparently traveled back in time to the period of Stan and Ford's childhood and left a small mark on the wall of their childhood story. This is either a fun background gag or a hint at a more complicated temporal relationship that the show never fully unpacks. Given what this show is, probably both. Fact 118. Sos's full name is Jesus Alzamirano Ramirez. He is 22 years old during the events of the series, which places his birth in approximately 1990. He grew up without a father. His dad never came back from a trip he said he was going on. And he has effectively adopted the Mystery Shack as his family and Stan as his father figure, which Stan accepts without ever saying so directly. The details of Seuss's emotional history are given to the audience in small amounts, quietly, in ways that accumulate into something genuinely affecting. Fact 119. Blendin Blandin is voiced by Justin Roiland, who was the co-creator of Rick and Morty and voiced both Rick and Morty in that series. Hirsch and Roiland are longtime friends who have made various references to each other's shows over the years. As the Rick and Morty episode Morty's Mind Blowers contains a memory labeled Stanford and another labeled Bill C. Both clear references to Gravity Falls characters, suggesting the two shows exist within the same multiverse in a way that is never made fully explicit. Fact 120. Little Gideon, the child psychic and early season antagonist, is voiced by Thurop Van Orman, the creator and showrunner of The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack, which was also the show where Alex Hirsch worked before moving to Disney. Hirsch hired a former colleague to voice a villain in his own show. Gideon's accent, his pompadour, and his particular brand of sweetly vicious ambition make him one of the show's most memorable antagonists. More unsettling in many ways than Bill, because his cruelty is human-scaled. Fact 121. Pacifica Northwest's family secret, that the Northwest family fortune was built on a lie, that Nathaniel Northwest was not the real founder of Gravity Falls, was hinted at long before the reveal in Northwest Mansion Mystery. In Season 1's Irrational Treasure, the episode about Quentin Tremblay and the buried history of the town's founding, the ground is laid for what Season 2 will make explicit. The show plants seeds in comedy episodes and harvests them in serious ones. Fact 122. Wendy Corduroy, voiced by Linda Cardellini, is 15 years old during the events of the show, 3 years older than Dipper, and the show handles his crush on her with a consistency and care that's somewhat unusual for animated television. It doesn't mock the crush. It doesn't pretend it's mutual in a way that would be inappropriate. And it lets Dipper have real feelings, and then it gives Wendy the dignity of a full and direct conversation, about why those feelings can't become what Dipper wants them to be. She stays his friend. That's the right ending. Fact 123. In the final episode, when Jason Ritter and Linda Cardellini are referenced as the voices of Dipper and Wendy, there is also a brief live-action clip in one of the Weirdmageddon reality distortion bubbles where they appear dressed as their characters. It's a background gag, blink and you miss it, but it means the voice actors physically appear in the show they spent years giving voice to. The fourth wall gets slightly complicated in Gravity Falls and stays that way. Fact 124. The character of Sheriff Blubbs and Deputy Durland, the town's law enforcement, undergo a subtle transformation over the course of the series. In Season 1, they are primarily comedic figures representing the uselessness of official authority in Gravity Falls. In Season 2, their relationship is increasingly depicted with warmth, and in the finale, they are shown as genuinely caring about each other, with the show's creators later confirming that the two characters are in a romantic relationship. This was one of the queer-coded inclusions that Hirsch managed to get past Disney's Standards and Practices department, though not without difficulty. Fact 125. The goat who lives at the Mystery Shack is named Gompers. He is named after Samuel Gompers, the labor union leader who was one of the founders of the American Federation of Labor in the late 19th and early 20th century. This is never explained in the show. The goat is just named after a historically significant labor organizer because Gravity Falls is that kind of show. Part 13. The Three Journals. Objects that shaped everything fact? 126. Ford wrote 3 journals over the course of his years, researching in Gravity Falls. Journal 1 was the beginning, his earliest observations, his first encounters with the town's anomalies, the initial excitement of a researcher who has found something unprecedented. Journal 2 was written as things became more complicated, as Bill's influence grew and Ford's trust in his own perceptions began to erode. Journal 3 was written in a state of increasing paranoia, ending with the instruction that would define the show: trust no one. Fact 127. Journal 3 was hidden inside a metal tree structure deep in the Gravity Falls forest. Ford had designed the hiding place specifically to be findable by the right person, someone curious and persistent enough to go into the forest, notice the anomaly, and investigate further. Dipper found it in the first episode. The question of whether Dipper found it by chance or whether something guided him there is left open, in the way that Gravity Falls leaves its most interesting questions open. Fact 128. Journal 3 contains pages written in invisible ink that can only be seen under ultraviolet light. Dipper doesn't discover this until Scary Oak, the Season 2 premiere, when he uses a UV light and suddenly finds new information that had been sitting in the journal the whole time. The hidden ink pages lead him to the underground bunker and the shapeshifter. The journal had more to tell him all along. He just didn't have the right light to read it. Fact 129. Journal 1 and Journal 2 ended up in the possession of Lil Gideon before the end of Season 1. He obtained them through various means and used them to try to gain access to the Mystery Shack's secrets. His belief that having all 3 journals would give him access to something immensely powerful was correct. He just didn't fully understand what the portal actually was or what opening it would mean. Fact 130. Ford's first entry in Journal 3 begins. It's hard to believe it's been 6 years since I began researching the strange and wondrous secrets of Gravity Falls, Oregon. The date associated with this entry is June 18th, which is Alex Hirsch's birthday. Ford began his Gravity Falls journal on Alex Hirsch's birthday. The show's creator signed his most personal project with the oldest and simplest signature he had. Fact 131. The physical real-world version of Gravity Falls, Journal 3, published in 2016 by Disney Publishing, became a #1 New York Times bestseller and remained on the bestseller list for nearly a full year. By January 2024, according to marketing materials for the Book of Bill, it had sold more than 1.3 million copies. A 288-page tie-in book for a Disney Channel cartoon about 2 kids in Oregon was one of the best-selling books in the United States for most of a calendar year. Everyone who said the audience wasn't there was wrong. Fact 132. The special edition of Journal 3, released on June 13th, 2017 and limited to 10,000 copies, contains blacklight readable writing, parchment-style pages, a monocle, removable photos and handwritten notes, and other material not included in the regular edition. This edition was designed to replicate the actual experience of holding Ford's journal. A complete physical object that rewarded examination, full of things that were only visible under the right conditions. Fact 133. In the show's mythology, after Weirdmageddon ends and Bill is defeated, the journals are restored. Even pages that Ford had previously torn out are repaired and returned. The family decides to throw all three journals into the bottomless pit to rid themselves of the trouble they've caused. In the Supplemental Journal 3 book, a note clarifies that the journals were later found by Oregon Parks Department rangers, who got headaches and nightmares from them and put them up for sale at a confiscated items bake-off. This means Journal 3, the physical book you can buy in a store, is, in the fiction of the show, literally Ford's actual journal, having found its way from Gravity Falls into our world somehow. Part 14. The Cipher Hunt, a real-world mystery fact 134. Alex Hirsch designed the Cipher Hunt, a real-world treasure hunt to find a physical statue of Bill Cipher, as a final gift to the show's audience. He described his goal as giving fans one final mystery none were expecting, consistent with the show's theme of rewarding those who look closely. He wanted to do something that no show had done before. He planted the seed of the hunt in the very last seconds of the series finale, and then spent months quietly preparing the rest of it. Fact 135. The Bill Cipher statue itself was designed and built by Fawn Davis, a prop fabricator who had worked on movies and served as a judge on the ABC robot combat show BattleBots. The statue was constructed from plexiglass, a material chosen specifically for its ability to withstand years of outdoor exposure. Before being placed in its location, the statue had glue mixed with seeds rubbed into its surface, so it would grow moss over time and look as though it had been sitting in the forest for years. The plan was for the statue to look genuinely naturally old. Fact 136. The statue was placed in Reedsport, Oregon, on private property with the owner's permission, before the show's finale even aired. A few seconds of footage of the installed statue were recorded and edited into the very end of the finale. When the finale aired on February 15, 2016, fans immediately noticed the footage and began speculating about whether the statue was real. An encoded riddle in the episode spoke of buried treasure deep within the woods and a statue beyond the rusty gates. The hunt had already begun before anyone knew it was happening. Fact 137. Before the official hunt began, a resident of Reedsport named Bradley Pick found the statue on his own while going for a walk. He had never heard of Gravity Falls. He posted a photo of the strange triangular statue he'd found to an Unsolved Mysteries subreddit, where it generated almost no attention. The person who ran a fan site called the Mystery of Gravity Falls did find the post, recognized what it was, and immediately contacted Alex Hirsch. Bradley Pick's name is in the treasure chest. He was the actual first person to find Bill. Fact 138. The Cipher Hunt officially launched on July 20th, 2016, with Alex Hirsch posting an image on social media. The first clue it contained, when decoded, pointed to a cathedral in St. Petersburg, Russia. Fans who lived in or near St. Petersburg physically went to the Kazan Cathedral and found the first physical clue. The hunt required a genuinely global effort, not just coordination, but actual people in different countries, physically going to locations and retrieving objects and uploading what they found for the community to work with. Fact 139. Subsequent clues in the Cipher Hunt took participants to a shrine in Japan, to Confusion Hill in Piercy, California, to Griffith Park in Los Angeles, to a mall in Century City, to a geocache in Amity, Oregon, and finally to the Enchanted Forest Amusement Park in Turner, Oregon for the final clue before the statue itself. Each clue was encoded using methods consistent with the show's cipher tradition, and each required people to physically travel to real locations to retrieve the next piece. Fact 140. Jason Ritter, the voice of Dipper, joined the hunt in person during the Los Angeles portion, but he was near the Century City Mall location and couldn't resist participating. He teamed up with fans, went live on social media, and they found the clue together. The voice of the show's main character, running through a mall in LA with a group of fans, hunting for a piece of paper hidden under a rock. This is the kind of event that only exists because a creator loved his audience that much. Fact 141. The treasure chest buried in front of the statue when it was found on August 2nd, 2016 contained plastic coins and gems, Russian and Japanese currency, a special copy of Journal 3 with original drawings by Hirsch, a blacklight flashlight, a plastic crown, a sash reading Mayor of Gravity Falls, a music box with Bill Cipher's eye on the lid that played the show's theme, a miniature Bill Cipher statue, and a framed sketch of the main characters standing with the statue, and a USB drive. The note written in invisible ink visible under the UV light read, "Congratulations on finding the Bill Cipher statue. Bill Cipher's final resting place. Whosoever finds this treasure is hereby the new mayor of Gravity Falls, so use your title well." Fact 142. After the statue was found, local Reed Sport authorities temporarily seized it over a property dispute about who owned the land it was on. In the process, the statue's hat, which had already been slightly damaged, was broken off. The hat subsequently went missing from the police station. Alex Hirsch posted asking for its return. It was never returned. It was eventually revealed that the Reed Sport police had thrown the hat away. Bill Cipher's hat was lost to municipal waste disposal. Fact 143. The Bill Cipher statue currently resides at Confusion Hill, a roadside attraction in Piercy, California, one of the original Cipher Hunt clue locations. This is not a coincidence. Confusion Hill is the kind of place that could have been lifted directly out of Gravity Falls. It is a real roadside attraction where the claim is that gravity behaves strangely, where optical illusions make objects seem to roll uphill and people seem to lean at impossible angles. Bill Cipher now lives at a mystery shack that actually exists. The show's mythology has fully merged with the physical world. Part 15. Production Secrets. What happened behind the scenes fact. 144. Alex Hirsch clashed repeatedly with Disney's Standards and Practices Department over content during the production of Gravity Falls. Many of these conflicts involved attempts to include or retain queer-coded content. One specific incident involved a background scene in the episode The Love God, depicting two elderly women holding hands and sharing a significant glance. Disney's Standards and Practices rejected this scene and required it to be removed, deeming it inappropriate despite its entirely non-sexual nature. Fact 140. Hirsch has described Disney's response to queer representation in Gravity Falls as a consistent source of frustration throughout production. He succeeded in getting some queer-coded content into the show, most notably the evolving relationship between Blubbs and Durland and various background details, through persistent negotiation and by framing inclusions in ways that were harder to flag. He has been publicly critical about this experience, particularly in a series of tweets around the show's 10-year anniversary, where he shared emails from Standards and Practices that illustrated the specific battles involved. Fact 146. The character the horrifying, sweaty, one-armed monstrosity in Weirdmageddon was originally voiced by Louis C.K. Following the public revelation of his sexual misconduct in 2017, Alex Hirsch re-recorded those lines himself. Disney updated the streaming and broadcast versions of the relevant episodes. The character's existing audio was replaced in all publicly available versions of the show. Hirsch is now the credited voice for the character. Fact 147. In The Legend of the Gobblewonker, the script called for Stan to deliver the punchline to a joke exactly once. During recording, Alex Hirsch accidentally delivered it twice in a row, creating an awkward and slightly manic repetition. The team found this funnier than the scripted version and kept it. The result is one of the most quoted comedy moments in the series, a perfect illustration of the show's willingness to let accidents improve upon intention. Fact 148. Both Jason Ritter and Kristen Schaal became significantly more well-known through their work on Gravity Falls than they had been before. Ritter had appeared in various television roles, and Schaal had a developing comedy career, but the show gave both of them a profile and an audience that extended beyond their previous work. Voice acting on an animated show is not typically considered star-making in the way live-action roles are, but Gravity Falls changed that for both of them. Fact 149. The voice cast of Gravity Falls includes, at various points, Jason Ritter, Kristen Schaal, Alex Hirsch, J.K. Simmons, Linda Cardellini, Thorup Van Orman, Justin Roiland, John DiMaggio, D. Bradley Baker, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Nick Offerman, Jennifer Coolidge, Patton Oswalt, Chelsea Peretti, and a long list of others. Neil deGrasse Tyson voices the character of Toby Determined in Northwest Mansion Mystery. The show assembled something that functioned less like a typical animated series voice cast and more like a standing invitation to talented people to come in and be strange. Fact 150. Alex Hirsch has stated in interviews that writing Gravity Falls was incredibly draining in a way he hadn't anticipated. He was integrally involved in the writing of almost every episode, in the development of the mythology, in the recording sessions, in the cipher systems, yet in the promotional material, in the external puzzles. By the end of Season 1, he had genuinely considered ending the show on a cliffhanger. He described the period after the show ended, the year he spent traveling and saying yes to everything, as something similar to what Stan felt setting off on the Stano War 2. He needed time away from the Mystery Shack. Part 16. Weirdmageddon, the apocalypse that almost was fact. 151. Weirdmageddon begins in the episode of the same name when Mabel, having been tricked by Bill in Blendon Blandon's body, breaks the dimensional rift. The rift is a small glass sphere containing the last remnant of the portal's activation, a concentrated piece of cross-dimensional energy that Bill needed to cross over fully into the physical world. When the glass breaks, Bill enters the third dimension with a physical body for the first time. This is why Bill's plan across the entire series had one central requirement. He needed a human to do the breaking for him. Fact 152. Weirdmageddon proceeds in 3 parts. The first part shows Bill's immediate consolidation of power over Gravity Falls, the physical transformation of the town, and the defeat and petrification of most of the main adult characters. The second part takes place almost entirely inside the dream bubble Mabel is trapped in, a perfect fantasy world of permanent summer that Dipper must navigate to find his sister. The third part is the full-scale battle for the town, culminating in the defeat of Bill. Each part has its own distinct tone and visual grammar, and together they constitute one of the most ambitious narrative conclusions in Disney animated television. Fact 153. The Shacktronauts. The giant mech suit assembled from the Mystery Shack itself during the Weirdmageddon finale is built from components that span the entire history of the show. The Mystery Shack is the torso. The dimensional portal is on the waist. The Tyrannosaurus Rex from Land Before Swine is the left forearm. Manly Dan's logging truck is the right forearm. The Gideon Bot's leg is the right leg of the Shacktron. Seuss's pickup truck is the left foot. The Mystery Shack's totem pole becomes a shoulder-mounted cannon. McGucket controls the beast by using his beard as a gear shift, exactly as he described using the Gobblewonker robot. Everything the show built, it brought back. Fact 154. Bill Cipher's mansion in Weirdmageddon, the Pyramid, is a direct visual reference to the Eye of Providence on the US dollar bill, rendered as an enormous 3-dimensional nightmare palace hanging over what used to be the town of Gravity Falls. The show puts its villain in a building that looks like his own face projected onto the most recognizable piece of American currency. This is funny and unsettling in equal measure. Fact 155. When Bill attempts to tempt Stan in the final moments before his defeat, he offers him fame, riches, infinite power, and his own personal galaxy. Stan refuses all of it. The show's creative team has noted that this sequence is a deliberate parallel to the temptation of Jesus in the gospel narratives, the devil offering all the kingdoms of the world in exchange for submission. Like Jesus in those accounts, Stan refuses everything. He rejects transcendence in favor of the people he loves. It is a genuinely religious story structure sitting inside a cartoon about gnomes. Fact 156. The backwards message at the end of Weirdmageddon Part 1, during the closing credits sequence, is simply, "I'm still here." This is Bill speaking from inside whatever it is he inhabits after physical defeat. In context of the episode, it functions as a taunt. In context of the show's mythology, it is also true. Bill is not gone after the finale. He is imprisoned, as the Book of Bill clarifies. But imprisonment and gone are not the same thing. Fact 157. The Gravity Falls series finale, Weirdmageddon 3 Take Back the Falls, attracted 2.47 million viewers upon its February 15th, 2016 broadcast, the most watched telecast in Disney XD's history at that point. The all-day marathon that preceded it drew 10.7 million unique total viewers, of which 5.4 million were children between the ages of 2 and 14. The show ended at the peak of its audience engagement, which is extraordinarily rare in any medium. Part 17. Legacy, Awards, and What Came After Fact. 158. Gravity Falls won 2 Emmy Awards, 3 Annie Awards, and a BAFTA Children's Award during its run, among numerous other nominations. The Annie Awards, given by the International Animated Film Association, included Outstanding Achievement in Writing in an Animated TV Production, which was the most direct acknowledgement of what made the show exceptional. It was consistently nominated for a Peabody Award, one of broadcasting's most prestigious honors, which recognizes stories that matter. Fact 159. Dana Terrace, who was a storyboard artist on Gravity Falls, went on to create the Owl House for Disney Channel, a show that pushed queer representation in Disney animation significantly further than Gravity Falls had been permitted to, including an explicit bisexual main character and a same-sex central relationship. The Owl House exists in part because of what Gravity Falls attempted and what Gravity Falls proved was possible. Fact 160. Matt Brawley, who was a director and storyboard artist on Gravity Falls, created Amphibia for Disney Channel. Amphibia featured a Gravity Falls tribute episode called Wax Museum in its 2nd season, in which Alex Hirsch provided a guest voice role as Frog Suze, a frog version of the Mystery Shack's beloved handyman. The Gravity Falls alumni community has remained creatively connected and continued making shows that bear the influence of what they learned on the original series. Fact 161. Chris Houghton, a former storyboard artist on Gravity Falls, co-created Big City Greens with his brother Shane. Alex Hirsch has appeared in voice roles on Big City Greens as well, maintaining the cross-show relationship that the Gravity Falls production family tends to cultivate. The show's most significant legacy might be the creative community it built and scattered across American animation. Fact 162. The Book of Bill, published in 2024, is written entirely from Bill Cipher's first-person perspective. It deepens the mythology of his origin in Euclidia, expands on his relationship with Ford, explains why Gravity Falls was specifically significant to his plans, and clarifies his fate after the events of the series finale. The book confirms that Bill is now imprisoned in the Theraprism, a rehabilitation facility existing outside of space and time, and that he is, as anyone familiar with his character would expect, not remotely interested in rehabilitation. Fact 163. Gravity Falls, Lost Legends, published as a graphic novel in 2018, contains 4 new adventures set in the show's timeline and written by Alex Hirsch himself. One of the stories, The Pines Boys and the Jersey Devils in the Details, depicts Stan and Ford as children in Glass Shard Beach, New Jersey, investigating a mystery together before their relationship fractured. It's set during the time when they were still the team they were always supposed to be. And it is quietly heartbreaking in the way that stories about things that haven't been lost yet often are. Fact 164. Gravity Falls is listed as one of the top 50 most watched shows on Disney Plus of all time, according to marketing data released in January 2024. The show ended in 2016. It has been available for streaming for years, gathering new viewers who weren't watching it when it aired. More than 500 million minutes of Gravity Falls were watched on Disney Plus in the year leading up to that announcement. The show is, by any reasonable measure, more popular now than it was when it ended. Fact 165. Alex Hirsch signed a multi-year development deal with Netflix in August 2018. He has worked on Inside Job, an adult animated series about employees managing a shadow government, which debuted in 2021 and ran for 1 season before cancellation. The adult animated series he was developing under the Netflix deal as of 2022 remained under NDA and unannounced. The Mystery Shack's creator has been building something in the dark, the way the best Gravity Falls stories always went. Part 18. The Final Facts. Things almost nobody knows. Fact 166. The axolotl, the cryptic entity invoked by Bill Cipher in his dying backwards message, is referenced in the Choose Your Own Adventure tie-in book, Dipper and Mabel and the Curse of the Time Pirate's Treasure. Select your own choose venture. There is a hidden coded link in the book that leads to a hidden interaction between Dipper and the axolotl itself. Dipper asks the axolotl about Bill Cipher. The axolotl's response is a poem that hints at the possibility of Bill's return and speaks of a kind of cosmic bargaining system that sits above the show's main mythology. This poem is, as far as many fans are concerned, the most important text in the entire Gravity Falls extended universe. Fact 167. The poem that the axolotl gives Dipper reads, in part, 60 degrees that come in threes, watches from within birch trees, saw his own dimension burn, misses home and can't return, says he's happy, he's a liar, blame the arson for the fire. This is the axolotl describing Bill. 60 degrees, the angles of an equilateral triangle, watches from birch trees. The pattern of eyes in birch bark resembles surveillance. Saw his own dimension burn, Euclidia, misses home and can't return. The truth that Bill's bluster conceals. Says he's happy. He's a liar. Everything you need to know about the character rendered in 6 words. Fact 168. In the episode Sock Opera, Bill Cipher possesses Dipper's body, an event fans call Bipper. While in Dipper's body, Bill's behavior reveals several things about his true emotional register. He is immediately delighted by physical sensation, by the experience of having a body and being able to move through space. He marvels at it. He's been stuck in the mindscape and the nightmare realm for so long that the simple act of moving through a physical world is euphoric for him. The scariest villain in the show is, in his most unguarded moments, just a thing that wants to exist in the physical world. Fact 169. The episode numbers for significant reveals in the series are often themselves significant. Not What He Seems is Season 2, Episode 11. A Tale of Two Stands is Season 2, Episode 12. These episodes were also the ones that drove record-breaking viewership. The show structured its mythology so that the highest stakes material came clustered together and then spent the remaining episodes paying off the emotional consequences of what had been revealed. This is unusual television architecture, particularly for an animated series targeted at children. Fact 170. Alex Hirsch has confirmed that the number sequence associated with the Pines family's hometown, Piedmont, California, was chosen partly because Piedmont is a real city in California, where Hirsch himself grew up. The show is set in a fictional Oregon town, but the twins come from a real California city. This means that every episode of the series begins, in some small way, with Hirsch's actual childhood. Fact 171. The Gravity Falls production team included a number of rules established early in production about what the show was and wasn't. One rule: the supernatural events of Gravity Falls are real. The show doesn't pull back and explain that it was all in someone's head, or that the monsters weren't real, or that everything has a rational explanation. This is more unusual than it sounds. Many shows in this genre eventually reveal a mundane explanation for the strange events. Gravity Falls does not. The gnomes are real. The ghosts are real. Bill Cipher was real. The world of the show is genuinely, permanently strange. Fact 172. Alex Hirsch has a real-life pet miniature donkey that he refers to as the chairman of the board. According to one source, he would consult the donkey when approving designs and storyboards during production. Whether this is entirely true or partly a joke that developed into something that felt true is unknown. The kind of person who puts a labor union leader's name on a goat named Gompers and hides his birthday throughout a television series might reasonably have a miniature donkey in an advisory capacity. It's not the least likely thing about the show. Fact 173. The episode Little Dipper contains a moment where Seuss wears Stan's fez, looks in a mirror, and says to himself, "One day." This is a joke in context. Seuss idolizing his boss, the comedy of the hat sitting slightly wrong on a different head. It is also, the show's finale reveals, a prophecy. Seuss becomes the new manager of the Mystery Shack when Stan and Ford leave for their sailing adventure. The fez passes to him. And the prediction made in a throwaway gag in Season 1 comes true in the final episode. The show sees its own future and hides the vision in the furniture. Fact 174. Bill Cipher appears in the background of Gravity Falls episodes long before he is introduced as a character. His triangular shape is in the rug of the Mystery Shack. His single eye is in the window of the attic. He appears in brief flashes during dream sequences and in shadow in corner frames. He is in the opening credits from the beginning. The show's mythological heart is visible in the background of the first episode for anyone who knows where to look. He was always there. The whole point is that he was always there. Fact 175. The real-life town of Reedsport, Oregon, where the Bill Cipher statue was found, has a population of approximately 4,100 people. The Cipher Hunt finale involved multiple groups of fans converging on a small rural Oregon town, digging up a treasure chest, shaking a statue's hand, and then being picked up by local police who were confused about what was happening. The Gravity Falls experience required actual municipal intervention at its conclusion, which is somehow the most appropriate ending possible. Fact 176, the number 207,012, the year that Blendin Blandin comes from, is referenced on the show's original website. There is a pop-up message that reads, "There may be fancy new letters in the year 207,012, but in our time period, we only have 26. This confirms for anyone keeping track that the time travel mythology of Gravity Falls extends roughly 200,000 years into the future, and that someone in that distant future decided to become a time bureaucrat and came back to monitor a small Oregon town in 2012. The scope of the show's mythology reaches in both directions. Fact 177. In Alex Hirsch's AMA conducted in character as Bill Cipher in April 2015, where he answered fans' questions as the character, one fan asked whether Bill had ever been human. Bill's response in character was evasive and strange in the way that Bill's answers always are, but the question itself anticipates the mythology that the Book of Bill would eventually expand. The AMA responses were written by Hirsch as a performance, but they were also canon, in the sense that Hirsch intended them to be. Bill Cipher's voice in that AMA is the same voice as in the show and the AMA are continuous. Fact 178. But the first episode of the show is called Tourist Trapped. The last substantial arc is called Weirdmageddon. The show moves from tourists being trapped in a mystery to the world itself being trapped in weirdness, a progression from small scale to cosmic. But the resolution of Weirdmageddon circles back to exactly the same thing the first episode was about. Family. The tourists and the weirdness were always just context. The actual story was about people. Fact 179. When the Gravity Falls Complete series was released on DVD and Blu-ray by Shout Factory. In July 2018, the collector's edition included a bonus features disc. The series has only been released in this physical format in the United States and Canada. As of Hirsch's interview with the Mary Sue, the complete series box set has since gone out of print, yet making physical copies increasingly difficult to find and correspondingly more valuable to collectors. The show's physical media legacy is already becoming a kind of artifact. Fact 180. Gravity Falls ran for exactly 40 episodes across 2 seasons, spanning a broadcast period from June 15, 2012 to February 15, 2016. Those 40 episodes told a single, complete, planned story from beginning to end, a rarity in television animation. Hirsch has been asked many times whether he regrets not making more. His answer is consistently the same. The show was what it was supposed to be. Adding more would have required it to become something different. The final stretch. The last 70 facts fact, 181. A Dipper's Big Dipper birthmark, the one he hides under his bangs, is never seen clearly until the episode Double Dipper, which is also the episode that reveals its existence to the audience and to other characters. Up until that point, every frame in which his forehead is visible without the hat is technically hiding the birthmark in plain sight. On a rewatch, you find yourself looking for it in early episodes, the way you look for Bill Cipher's triangle. Fact 182. Mabel's sweater count across the full series runs into the dozens. The production team made the deliberate creative choice that Mabel would essentially never repeat an outfit. She would always be wearing something new and frequently handmade looking. This was partly a character choice. Mabel makes things. Mabel expresses herself through craft, and partly a visual one. It makes Mabel immediately readable even in crowd scenes. But it also means that costume designers had to create a new sweater design for every single episode Mabel appeared in. Fact 183. The Summerween holiday, a Gravity Falls-specific celebration that treats Halloween-style traditions as belonging to summer rather than fall, was invented for the show's universe and has no real-world equivalent. It's presented as an old tradition specific to Gravity Falls, something that grew up in this particular strange town because the town needed it. Fans have since adopted Summerween as an actual observance, celebrating it on July 31st, exactly halfway around the calendar from October 31st, with decorations, costumes, and rewatches of the relevant episode. Fact 184. About the lumberjack ghost of Manito, the antagonist of the episode Northwest Mansion Mystery, was haunting the Northwest estate because of a broken promise made by the founding Northwest family. The show's treatment of the story is one of its quietest explorations of how generational sins accumulate. The ghost's anger is centuries old, and it's justified, and the resolution requires someone from the next generation to acknowledge what their ancestors did and make it right. Pacifica's arc in this episode is one of the most complete and affecting character moments in Season 2. Fact 185. Stan's criminal record, mentioned multiple times in the show with varying levels of comedy, includes charges across multiple states and under multiple identities. The show implies that his decades of con artistry, traveling under false names and using fake credentials, produced legal complications in enough jurisdictions that the record is essentially impossible to fully tabulate. Stan treats this as a point of perverse pride. The show treats it as both funny and quietly sad, the biography of a man who had no other options and got very good at working around them. Fact 186. The Manitors, the half-bull, half-man creatures who appear in Dipper vs. Manliness, are named. One of them is named Beardy, which is also the name of Alex Hirsch's full-sized adult taxidermied buffalo, which Hirsch allegedly keeps in his office and insists that visitors sit on during tours. The show and the person who makes the show have a consistent relationship with animals that may or may not be entirely conventional. Fact 187. Out of the Oracle who Ford encounters during his 30 years in the multiverse, the one who tells him he has the face of the man who will save him, is speaking about Stan. The Oracle is describing Ford's own twin, the identical face in a mirror, the person who looks exactly like him but lived a completely different life because of one night and one broken machine. The prophecy is not mystical in any conventional sense. It's just a description of family. Fact 188. Robbie Valentino, Banyaja, Wendy's ex-boyfriend and minor antagonist in Season 1, has his own symbol on the cipher wheel. His symbol is a heart. This is funnier than it needs to be given his character, but it also implies that Robbie has some cosmic role in the prophecy against Bill that the show never fully explores. He's one of the 10. But the show includes him in the final circle of protection. The heart belongs to someone who spent most of the show being difficult about a breakup. Fact 189. The episode Carpet Diem, in which Dipper and Mabel accidentally discover a room containing a mystical carpet that causes them to switch bodies, was one of the episodes specifically noted by Hirsch as an example of the show finding a supernatural premise and connecting it directly to a small, grounded human experience. The body switch is the supernatural element. The underlying story is about a boy and a girl who share a room and don't quite understand each other's inner lives. The carpet is just the door. Fact 190. Gravity Falls exists in the same universe as Rick and Morty, according to the show's respective creators. Now, the evidence includes Rick and Morty references to characters named Stanford and Bill C. in Morty's Mind Blowers, the Rick and Morty-style Plumbus appearing silhouetted in Journal 3 and a coded message in Journal 3 that decodes to "Rick was here." The two shows approach the same multiverse from different angles. Gravity Falls approaches it through the lens of family and summer, and Rick and Morty approaches it through the lens of science and nihilism. They are companion pieces in a canon that nobody ever officially declared. Fact 191. The Simpsons aired an episode in October 2021, Bart's in Jail, that featured Bill Cipher as one of Loki's incarnations, voiced by Alex Hirsch in a guest role. Bill Cipher appeared in the universe of The Simpsons, voiced by his original creator, inside an episode that was nominally about something entirely different. The Triangle Demon is officially part of Simpsons canon, and Hirsch voiced him there too. Fact 192. In an episode of Amphibia, the show created by Gravity Falls alumni Matt Brawley, there is an episode called Wax Museum that functions as a direct tribute to Gravity Falls. Alex Hirsch voices Frog Suze, a frog version of the Mystery Shack's handyman, alongside a frog version of Grunkle Stan. The Gravity Falls characters exist in the Amphibia universe as frog replicas, which is simultaneously a loving tribute and a piece of canon weirdness that fits perfectly. Fact 193. The only character who appears in every episode of the show, as confirmed by the production team, is Dipper Pines. This includes all main episodes and specials. Which Mabel is the second most consistent presence. Given that the show has a relatively large cast of recurring characters, and given how heavily the show relies on its mythology, this consistency is part of what makes the series feel like a single sustained story rather than a collection of episodes. Fact 194. Gravity Falls was Disney XD's highest-rated series during its run, with an average of 1.8 million viewers per episode across both seasons. This makes it the most successful original series in the channel's history at the time of broadcast. Disney XD was in the process of repositioning itself as a destination for slightly older animated content when Gravity Falls premiered, and the show's success defined what that repositioning meant in practice. Fact 195. The Weirdmageddon portion of the show features a brief live-action clip when Dipper and Ford drive through one of Bill's reality distortion bubbles, a bubble in which cartoons are real. In that clip, the viewer sees actual footage of Jason Ritter and Linda Cardellini dressed as Dipper and Wendy, interacting with each other in what appears to be a filmed scene. The animated characters drive through a reality where their voice actors are the real versions of them, and then drive back out again. It is a brief, strange, and affectionate piece of metafiction. Fact 196. The closing shot of the series, the very last image before the credits roll for the final time, is of the Mystery Shack at night, with a light on inside. The summer is over. The twins have gone home. But the light is on. Someone is still there. Like the Mystery Shack is still open, still strange, still holding the particular quality of mystery that has characterized it from the first frame. The show ends where it began, and implies that it never really ends at all. Fact 197. Ford's first words upon emerging from the portal, upon seeing Stan, upon being returned to the world after 30 years of dimensional exile, are confrontational. He doesn't say thank you. He doesn't acknowledge what Stan did. He immediately demands to know what Stan has done to his house. This is presented as comedy, but it's also characterization of deep precision. Ford's failure mode is the same one that cost him his relationship with his brother 50 years earlier. The first thing he does upon return is repeat the pattern. It will take the rest of the season for him to learn to do something different. Fact 198. One of the final cryptograms of the series, if decoded, contains a message that fans have interpreted as Hirsch speaking directly to the audience rather than through any fictional voice. The decoded text reads as a kind of farewell, not in character, not as Stan or Ford or Bill, but as the person who made the show and is now letting it go. The cipher system that began as a puzzle, the show asked you to solve ends as a private message the show wanted to send. Fact 199. Stan's catchphrase, "Reality is an illusion. The universe is a hologram. Buy gold, buy," which he shouts while pulling away from the Mystery Shack in various money-making schemes, is both a joke and, within the logic of the show's cosmology, factually accurate. Gravity Falls is a show where the universe is in fact structured somewhat holographically, but where physical reality is subject to disruption by dimensional forces. where the relationship between consciousness and matter is genuinely unstable. The con man's sales pitch for a cheap tourist attraction turns out to be a precise description of the world he lives in. Fact 200. The show begins with summer starting and ends with summer ending. Not just any summer, this specific summer, which the show treats as singular and irreplaceable. Dipper and Mabel will go back to Piedmont. They will go to school. They will grow up. The summer in Gravity Falls will become the summer they look back on. The one where everything changed, where they found out what the world was really made of, where they met a triangle that wanted to end everything and a great uncle who sacrificed his mind to stop it. So the show understands that some summers are not like other summers. It made an entire mythology out of that understanding. Fact 201. Alex Hirsch has said publicly that he remains open to returning to Gravity Falls in some form. Additional episodes, specials, or other extensions of the story. He has been careful about this, noting that any return would need to serve the story rather than simply the audience's appetite for more. The ending was planned. Returning would require a reason that was planned in the same way. Whether that reason exists or will eventually exist, only he knows. Fact 202. The name Grunkle, a portmanteau of Great Uncle that the show uses as a title for Stan and later Ford, was invented by the show. It is not a real word in standard English. However, in the years since Gravity Falls aired, Grunkle has entered informal usage in enough communities that several online dictionaries have added definitions for it. Language follows stories sometimes. The show gave the world a word for a category of relative that existed but didn't have a name. Fact 203. Stan Pines was born on June 15th, the same date that Gravity Falls premiered on Disney Channel in 2012. The show made its main character's birthday the show's own birthday. Grunkle Stan arrived into the world on the same day the show that told his story arrived into the world. This feels like exactly the kind of detail that was entirely deliberate, quietly meaningful, and never formally announced. Fact 204. The tent in which little Gideon performs his psychic act, the Tent of Telepathy, is the Mystery Shack's primary commercial competitor in Gravity Falls. But the battle between Stan and Gideon is framed as a business rivalry, which is comic, but it is also a structural parallel. Both the Mystery Shack and the Tent of Telepathy are built on the exploitation of credulity, on presenting something false as supernatural for profit. The difference is that Stan is a lovable con artist and Gideon is a genuinely dangerous one. The show is interested in what makes the same basic operation sympathetic in one context and threatening in another. Fact 205. Blendon Blandon's camouflage suit, the invisibility-adjacent technology he wears as a time traveler, is described in the show's universe as being standard equipment for time travel operatives in the year 207,012. It doesn't make him invisible so much as it makes him blend into the visual noise of any environment. But the joke of Blendon's appearances throughout early episodes is that his camouflage is clearly not working. He's visible in every shot, you can see him clearly. He's just standing in the background being weird. The technology works exactly well enough to be used and not quite well enough to be relied upon. Fact 206. The Mystery Shack's merchandise, the trinkets and fake supernatural artifacts Stan sells to tourists, is given specific names and descriptions in the show's universe. Items from the gift shop have included jackalope juice, alien jerky, later revealed to be regular jerky, framed paintings of sad clowns, Stan's personal taste, and gold chains for Old Men magazine. Stan's curation philosophy appears to be, anything someone will pay for is worth selling, and when anything worth selling is worth presenting as authentically weird. Fact 207. The full timeline of events in Gravity Falls, from Ford's arrival in the town decades before the show's events, through the 30 years of Stan's work to rebuild the portal, through the summer that Dipper and Mabel arrive, through Weirdmageddon and its resolution, spans approximately 5 to 6 decades of storytime. The show as broadcast covers only one summer of that timeline directly, but the weight of those 50-plus years of accumulated consequence is present in every major character's emotional register. They have all been shaped by a history the audience is only seeing the last chapter of. Fact 208. Now, the episode The Last Mabelcorn, in which the group attempts to obtain unicorn hair to protect the Mystery Shack from Bill, is notable for several reasons, but one detail that rewards attention is Ford's revelation about the metal plate in his head. This is one of those moments the show places so efficiently that on first watch it registers as an interesting character detail, and only on rewatch does its full strategic importance become visible. Ford mentions it because it's relevant to the conversation he's having. The show doesn't call attention to it. It just puts it there and trusts the viewer to remember it when it matters. Fact 209. Gravity Falls is set entirely during one summer. 12 weeks, roughly, from June to early September. The entire mythology, the journals, the portal, the Pines Brothers reunion, but Bill Cipher's Weirdmageddon, the final battle, unfolds within a single summer vacation. This constraint is both a creative choice and an emotional one. The summer has an end, and the show always knows the end is coming, and that knowledge gives the mythology its particular urgency. You only get one summer like this. The show makes you feel that. Fact 210. The Gravity Falls credit sequence contains a brief shot of an old black and white photograph of a couple, a man and a woman, that appears during the scrolling family photo sequence. Fans have debated who this couple is, with theories ranging from an early version of Ford and McGucket to Stan and a historical love interest to entirely incidental background imagery. Hirsch has not confirmed an identity. Some background details in this show are puzzles. Some are just pictures. Have Fact 211. The show's influence on subsequent animated series has been documented extensively by critics and creators. Shows including Steven Universe, Star vs. the Forces of Evil, The Owl House, and Amphibia have all cited Gravity Falls as an influence, particularly in its use of serialized story arcs, its willingness to develop mythology across an entire series, and its approach to combining comedy with genuine emotional stakes. The show proved that long-form narrative was viable in Disney Channel animation, and the shows that followed took that proof and pushed further with it. Fact 212. In Dipper's Guide to the Unexplained, the short-form web series that accompanied the main show, there is a short titled Stan's Tattoo, in which Dipper and Mabel try to investigate the mysterious mark on Stan's shoulder. They don't find out what it means. Stan deflects every inquiry with characteristic efficiency. The tattoo, the portal symbol, the red mark of his 30-year commitment, sits on his shoulder undiscovered for the entire short, and the audience already knows more than Dipper does. Fact 213. The Society of the Blind Eye's headquarters is hidden beneath the Gravity Falls Museum of History, accessed through a specific artifact that serves as a switch. The choice to hide a secret organization dedicated to the erasure of memory inside a museum, a place whose entire purpose is the preservation of memory, is not accidental. Gravity Falls is always interested in irony that also means something. Fact 214. Gideon's white pompadour, his most visually distinctive feature, was chosen as a reference to Elvis Presley's iconic hairstyle. Filtered through a particular strain of Southern American charisma that has always been associated with performance and spectacle. Gideon is a performer who confused his own performance for his identity, which is one of the things that makes him a genuine threat. He can't stop being the character he's playing, even when the stakes are highest. Fact 215. The Zodiac poem, discovered by Ford in the caves beneath Gravity Falls and translated from the ancient language of the area's original inhabitants, is never fully rendered in the show. The fragments that are referenced or implied give enough of the structure to understand the system, but the complete text, whatever the original poem said, is withheld. Ford's journal contains his notes on it, but the poem itself, like the best things in the show, remains partially hidden. Fact 216. To the episode The Golf War, in which Mabel and Pacifica compete at miniature golf, introduces the Lilliputians, tiny beings who live inside the miniature golf course and have their own civilization, their own internal politics, their own history of conflict. They are also deeply, comically petty in ways that map exactly onto human tribalism. The episode is a comedy about miniature golf. It is also a satire of the human capacity to build empires around the smallest possible stakes. Fact 217. Ford's time in the multiverse left him with specific knowledge of at least some of the alternate dimensions accessible through the portal system. Journal 3 references these experiences, including his time in the dimension of drifting excrement, which again is exactly as described, and other dimensions that the show implies were significantly stranger and more disturbing. 30 years in the multiverse, using his own experience and intelligence to survive, shaped Ford into something that is not quite what he was when he went in. The show is careful about this. Fact 218. In the episode Fight Fighters, Dipper summons a video game character named Rumble McSkirmish into the real world using a cheat code. Rumble McSkirmish is a character from a fighting game called Fight Fighters, and once in the real world, he operates according to his programming rather than any genuine moral framework. He is a weapon, essentially, pointed at whatever Dipper points him at. The episode is a comedy about the danger of using tools you don't fully understand for purposes they weren't designed for. That theme appears elsewhere in the show in more serious registers. Fact 219. The penultimate episode of the series before the Weirdmageddon arc, Roadside Attraction, was placed second to last in the season at Disney's request. It is a lighter standalone episode positioned right before the three-part finale. Alex Hirsch has said he regrets this placement, feeling the transition from that episode into Weirdmageddon was jarring. He would have structured the lead-up differently, but the show was made within the constraints of network television, and some of those constraints left marks. Fact 220. In Dungeons, Dungeons, and More Dungeons, the episode in which Ford and Dipper bond over a fantasy strategy game, there is a moment when Ford produces the infinity-sided die from what appears to be inadequate storage. Thus, the die can literally cause anything to happen when rolled. Ford mentions it in passing and does not seem particularly concerned about the security risk. This is one of those small, recurring details that confirms Ford's relationship to safety protocols. He is brilliantly attentive to the things he finds intellectually interesting and somewhat absent-minded about everything else. Fact 221. The Real World Journal 3 book contains an entry dated June 18th, Alex Hirsch's birthday, in which Ford writes that he has been researching Gravity Falls for 6 years. This places Ford's arrival in Gravity Falls at June 18th of 6 years earlier. Both Ford's entry into Gravity Falls and the creator of the show share the same birthday. The author's story begins on the creator's birthday. The overlap feels deliberate and private, the kind of signature that exists primarily for the person making it. Fact 222. McGuckett's creations over the years in Gravity Falls, the objects he built during his decades of memory-erased genius operating without coherent direction, include a number of deeply impractical but technically impressive devices that appear as set dressing in various episodes. The show's production team committed to the idea that McGuckett's background inventions should be recognizable as the work of a genuine intelligence, even if the applications were completely nonsensical. Broken doesn't mean stupid. The show is careful about that distinction. Fact 223. Mabel's scrapbook, the object that brings Stan's memories back in the finale, is established as a running project throughout the series. She is building a record of the summer, episode by episode, collecting the memories they're making. By the time the finale arrives, the scrapbook functions as a capsule of everything that happened. Every creature, every adventure, every moment of the summer, that turned out to be the most important one any of them had. The show spends 2 seasons building the object that will save its oldest character's mind. Fact 224. The character named Tyler Cutebiker, the background townsperson who appears in various Gravity Falls town scenes, and is known for enthusiastically suggesting that anyone in a difficult situation should get him, became an unexpected fan favorite. He appears in the Weirdmageddon finale as one of the survivors. He makes it. Tyler Cutebiker survives the apocalypse by virtue of being too enthusiastic to give up. Fact 225. Alex Hirsch's cameo as a circus performer in the episode Bottomless Pit is notable for its specificity. He appears riding a unicycle while juggling, surrounded by crocodiles. This is not a background detail. The camera lingers on it briefly. Hirsch put a version of himself in the story, riding a unicycle in a circus, surrounded by crocodiles, because that is the energy of the person who made the show. Fact 226. The Mystery Shack's exhibits include several objects that appear to be genuine supernatural artifacts mixed in with obvious fakes. Stan presents all of them as equally authentic, which creates an epistemological problem for visitors. How do you tell the difference between a fake monster artifact and a real one when the man showing them to you is equally confident about everything? The show uses this as a recurring joke, but it also points to something real about how mystery and fraud often occupy the same territory. Fact 227. Dipper's pine tree hat was not something he owned before arriving in Gravity Falls. He acquired it in the first episode from the Mystery Shack's gift shop after the gnomes took his original hat. The pine tree hat, his most iconic visual element, belongs to Gravity Falls. It was not something he brought from his old life. He found it there, in the place that changed everything. This is the kind of detail that reads as visual shorthand on first watch, and as something more meaningful on rewatch. Fact 228. The Gravity Falls universe contains a bottomless pit, a literal hole in the ground that appears to be infinitely deep and opens onto itself such that things thrown in eventually come back out the top. Several characters use it at various points in the series for disposal or storage, and the episode Bottomless Pit takes place partly within it, using the falling time to tell stories. The show treats the bottomless pit as a permanent feature of the landscape, which means there is a hole in Gravity Falls that connects to itself and swallows things and returns them, quietly when everyone has forgotten about them. Fact 229. The twins' parents are seen only briefly in the series and are given almost no characterization. They made the choice to send their children to Gravity Falls for the summer in a way that seems, from the kids' initial perspective, like an exile or a punishment. The show doesn't interrogate this much, but the parents are absent in the way that parents in adventure stories need to be absent, so that the children can have the adventures. The Mystery Shack exists because Dipper and Mabel needed somewhere to be sent. Fact 230. Ford kept all 3 journals hidden in different locations in Gravity Falls before he was sent through the portal. Journal 1 and Journal 2 were hidden in places Stan was able to find over the course of his 30 years of searching, ultimately using the information in all 3 books to reconstruct the portal and bring his brother home. The distribution of the journals was Ford's attempt to prevent any one person from having access to the full knowledge of the portal. The irony is that the person Stan was hiding the knowledge from was himself. The people who eventually recovered the journals were his own family. Fact 231. Tourist Trapped, the first episode, ends with 2 reveals. The first is the expected resolution of the Monster of the Week plot. The second is Stan descending into the basement through the vending machine, alone, accessing a hidden room that the audience gets only a glimpse of. A humming machine, strange lights, something vast and purposeful. The show ends its very first episode by establishing that the person you thought the show was about has a secret that the show is actually about. Fact 232. The typeface used for the Gravity Falls title logo is a custom-designed font with a particular quality of aged, slightly weathered lettering, the kind you'd see on a roadside attraction sign that has been through several Oregon winters. The visual language of the show, from its logo to its backgrounds to its character designs, it was developed to evoke a very specific kind of American pastoral weird that is part Twin Peaks and part old road trip culture. The visual team built a world that looks like it has existed for decades before the show arrived to document it. Fact 233. The town of Gravity Falls has a newspaper called the Gravity Falls Gossiper. It has a sheriff, Blubs, a deputy, Durland, a mayor, and what appears to be a functioning municipal government, despite the fact that the government seems almost entirely unaware of the supernatural dimensions of the town's character. The show spends very little time establishing or satirizing the governmental structure of Gravity Falls, but what is there implies a functioning town operating in dignified obliviousness to the things living in its forest. Fact 234. On the Irrational Treasure. The episode in which a buried presidential conspiracy is revealed and Mabel is made a congresswoman is the show's most overt comedy episode in terms of its historical satire. It establishes that the town of Gravity Falls was founded not by the official historical figure of Nathaniel Northwest, but by a deranged man named Quentin Tremblay, who was the 8th-and-a-half president of the United States and who declared Gravity Falls to be its own country. The show uses this backstory to establish the town's fundamental relationship with official history. Everything you've been told is probably a simplified version of something much stranger. Fact 235. The specific sound design of Gravity Falls, the score by Brad Breek, the ambient sound of the Oregon forest. Now, the particular reverb on the dream sequences is as distinct and recognizable as anything visual about the show. Brad Breek composed a score that worked across the full range of the series, from the lightest comedy to the most genuinely frightening moments. He has credited Alex Hirsch's direction as having significantly developed his skills as a composer, particularly in terms of how music can support a scene's emotional architecture without overwhelming it. Fact 236. The show's episode, The Love God, involves a literal love deity who can be summoned by a specific formula. The Love God is a hippie-dressed, flying, genuinely affectionate being who wants nothing more complicated than for people to be in love. He is, relative to most of the supernatural entities in the show, basically harmless. That his powers are being used to manipulate relationships without consent, which the episode frames as wrong, and the resolution requires undoing his interventions. Even the benign supernatural forces in Gravity Falls carry ethical complications. Fact 237. Gideon's parents are established as being essentially terrified of him. His father is depicted as cowed, his mother as a wreck. He is a child who has successfully reversed the power dynamic of his family through a combination of manipulation and, before his arrest, actual telekinesis. The show's treatment of this is primarily comic. Gideon is too small to be visually menacing, but the underlying premise is dark and the show knows it. Fact 238. At the shapeshifter in Ford's bunker, a creature that can assume any form and which Dipper accidentally frees and into the bunker, is one of the show's most effectively frightening monsters. It can become whoever you trust most. It uses kindness and familiarity as weapons. The bunker episode is the closest the show gets to body horror in its first season, and the shapeshifter's most disturbing moment is when it briefly assumes Dipper's own form to get him to lower his guard. Fact 239. The show's relationship with its audience developed something unusual over its broadcast run. A community of viewers who were engaged with the show not just as entertainment, but as a puzzle they were actively trying to solve in real time, coordinating on forums and social media to crack ciphers, identify hidden details, and debate theories before episodes aired. This community preceded the show's conclusion and outlasted it. The audience Gravity Falls built was not passive. Fact 240. In a medium and on a network where the prevailing wisdom was that children's television should be episodic, self-contained, and avoid anything that required viewers to have seen previous episodes, Gravity Falls ran a serialized story with significant ongoing mythology. Every major event in the series affected subsequent events. Characters remembered what happened to them. The show treated its audience as capable of keeping track. This was, in 2012, a meaningful departure from the standard approach to children's animation, and it was the right call. Fact 241. Ford's student film at Backups University, the project that first attracted serious academic attention to his work and set him on the path toward Gravity Falls, was about anomalies. He chose to study what was strange and inexplicable as a field of research at a time when that was not a conventionally credentialed thing to do. The show presents this as a natural extension of who Ford is. Someone who cannot leave a puzzle alone, who needs to know what the exception to the rule is. Fact 242. The portal in the Mystery Shack basement required all 3 journals to operate. This was Ford's design. He distributed the knowledge deliberately so that no single person could activate the portal alone. The flaw in this plan was that all 3 journals were eventually gathered by the same person. Stan, who spent 30 years collecting them, the way you collect pieces of something that belongs to you. Fact 243. Pacifica Northwest's family conditioning is shown in one of the most quietly disturbing details in the series. Her parents trained her to respond to a bell. A literal bell rung to stop her from speaking or acting in ways that embarrass the family. When she's about to show genuine emotion or make a choice that contradicts what she's been told to be, the bell appears in her memory and she stops. This is not played for laughs. The show holds it straight-faced, which is the right choice. Fact 244. Weirdmageddon 2, Escape from Reality, takes place almost entirely inside the bubble. The dream construct Bill traps Mabel in. The bubble is a version of Gravity Falls that never ends. Where summer is permanent, and everyone Mabel loves is present and happy, and nothing is at stake. The show's most complete depiction of a perfect world is what it uses as the trap. It's the most sophisticated thing the series does. The perfect world is the danger. Fact 245. Stan's decision to erase his own memory to defeat Bill is the culmination of a character arc that began in the first episode with the implication that he was hiding something. He spent the entire series hiding his identity, his purpose, the device in the basement, his love for the kids. The memory erasure is the final, total act of hiding, erasing himself entirely so that his brother and his family can survive. He hides himself away so completely that he no longer exists. And then, slowly, Mabel brings him back. Fact 246. The Season 2 finale broke Disney XD's previous viewership record, which had been set by A Tale of Two Stans earlier in the same season. The two episodes that broke network records were both deep mythology episodes with significant emotional stakes and limited comedy. The audience watched more of the show when the show was doing its most serious work. The network's anxiety about whether children would follow complex, emotionally demanding storytelling was definitively answered. Fact 247. Alex Hirsch has described the ending of Gravity Falls as being an ending about the value of impermanence. The summer had to end. The twins had to go home. The show had to finish. The things that matter are not the ones that last forever, but the ones that happened while they were happening. This is the philosophical architecture of the entire series. Urgency created by finitude. Meaning created by the knowledge that meaning has a time limit. Fact 248. The last fully original piece of content in the Gravity Falls extended universe, as of this writing in 2026, is the Book of Bill, published in September 2024. It is told from Bill's perspective, set across the full sweep of his trillion-year history, and closes on him, imprisoned in the Theraprism, with no apparent intention of accepting the rehabilitation he's been offered. It ends the way Bill Cipher has always ended things, with a door that is technically closed but never quite locked. The universe remains a hologram. The mystery persists. Fact 249. Gravity Falls as a show ran for 3 years, 8 months, and 1 day, from June 15th, 2012 to February 15th, 2016. In those 3 years and change, it produced 40 episodes, multiple short-form web series, 2 major tie-in books, a video game, a graphic novel, a real-world treasure hunt spanning 3 continents, and an audience that has not gone away in the decades since. It told a complete story, from the first cipher in the opening credits to the last backwards whisper in the finale. It said what it had to say, and then it was done. Fact 250. The thing about Gravity Falls, the fact that underlies every other fact in this list, the reason that 250 facts are not enough and 2,500 would not be enough, is that the show was built to reward love. Every layer you find leads to another layer. Every detail that seems incidental turns out to connect to something larger. Every character you think you know has a depth you haven't reached yet. It is not a show that exhausts itself. It is a show that deepens with time, that changes with the age you bring to it, that trusts you to keep looking and keeps leaving things for you to find. The pine trees are still out there. The Mystery Shack light is still on. And somewhere in a forest in Piercy, California, a yellow triangle in stone watches the road go by, wearing no hat, saying nothing, waiting.